Chapter 1088. Terrifying to the extreme, audacious to the extreme. Everything that Yi Xian had done was simply indescribable. As for Zhang Yunshan and the other chaos creatures, they were completely stunned on the spot. Seizing the mystery of chaos, invading the sun, moon, and stars, Yi Xian had finally forged his supreme saint body in the chaotic 9 kills, and refined the chaotic 9 kills for his own use. Of course, Yi Xian had only created the body of a great sage at this moment. He still had 2 more tribulations to go through. Only after he completely passed through this mutated chaos holy tribulation would he be able to truly become a great sage. As the saying goes, misfortune and fortune are interdependent. Although the variant chaotic divine tribulation had caused Yi Xian to suffer a great tribulation, if he could pass through it, he would become an unbeatable existence in the supreme saint realm. You reap what you sow. This was an unchanging truth. Yi Xian would naturally reap what he sow. Buzz. The chaotic grand starry sky was swaying. 5 colored flames whistled out, completely turning the chaotic starry sky into a 5-colored world. The faintly discernible chaotic 5-colored mysterious fire was brewing. Yi Xian's figure was boundlessly tall. He silently waited for the chaotic 5-colored mysterious fire to brew. There were no ripples in his eyes. Instead, there was a sense of calmness. Everyone had a fear of the unknown. Even Yi Xian was no exception. In the face of the chaotic 9 kills, Yi Xian thought that he would definitely die. However, in the midst of the life and death calamity, he finally comprehended the mystery and forged his supreme saint body. In fact, a person's greatest fear came from himself. If he could open his mind and welcome everything, the fear brought by the unknown would not be so terrible. Woo woo woo. The chaos astral wind was whistling as the 5-colored mystic flame was brewing. It gradually turned the chaos grand starry sky into a 5-colored world. The 5-colored mystic flame covered the sky and covered the earth. The blazing flames even burned the starry sky. Retreat! Yuan Ling's expression changed slightly. Although they were on the other side of the starry sky, the appearance of the 5-colored mysterious fire had the potential to affect them. This also caused Yuan Ling and the others to quickly retreat. Mysterious fire to cast soul. Yi Xian looked up at the flames that covered the sky and murmured. There was a touch of determination in his eyes. The chaotic mysterious fire was a product of the chaotic law, and the 5-colored chaotic mysterious fire was 10 times more terrifying than the chaotic mysterious fire. In the past, Pan Gu had been killed by the chaotic mysterious fire. The 5-colored mysterious chaotic mysterious fire could be seen from this. The so-called casting of the soul with dark flame sounded simple, yet it was actually extremely dangerous, and a single misstep would cause one's soul to disperse and perish. Just now, the 9-colored lightning had forged a great sage's body for Yi Xian. By relying on Yi Xian's undying will, he'd finally succeeded. However, the 5-colored profound fire was different. It was a terrifying thing that directly affected Yi Xian's soul. If Yi Xian's soul was annihilated by the 5-colored profound fire, it would mean that he'd fallen between heaven and earth. Whoosh! The 5-colored chaotic mysterious fire was finally formed. 5 brilliant flames whistled in the starry sky and rushed toward Yi Xian. The chaotic starry sky was burned into a vacuum. It was as if it wanted to bury Yi Xian in the starry sky. Come! Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the starry sky. He formed a seal with his hands and let the 5-colored mysterious fire attack him. There was no aura around him. The black saint heart in his body was beating rapidly. The so-called saint heart was the condensation of Yi Xian's law and way. It also contained his soul will. The 5-colored mysterious fire was a terrifying product that directly affected his saint heart. It was to destroy his soul will. Whoosh! The 5-colored mysterious fire whistled down. The 5-colored flames drowned Yi Xian. But the strange thing was that his body did not suffer any damage. But Yi Xian's face instantly became hideous. It was as if he was enduring unimaginable pain. Bang bang bang. The starry sky shook. Yi Xian's body became extremely illusory. A beating black saint heart emerged and was being attacked by the 5-colored mysterious fire. Arg! An extremely painful roar came from Yi Xian's mouth. The black saint heart made a cracking sound. Terrifying cracks appeared, and caused unimaginable pain to Yi Xian. It was as if 10,000 arrows were piercing his heart, and 10,000 ants were biting him. This was a kind of pain that affected the soul. Outsiders could not imagine what kind of cruel torture Yi Xian was going through. The five-colored chaotic mysterious fire was a flame that could destroy everything. It was a flame that affected the soul. It could even destroy one's mind and completely annihilate one under the five-colored mysterious fire. Immortal soul, immortal will. Yi Xian roared. His soul will had started to become muddled. Under the burning of the five-colored mysterious fire, he tried his best to stay awake. He did not want to be burned to death by the five-colored mysterious fire. Arg! An extremely painful voice came from Yi Xian's mouth again. His black saint heart exploded with a bang, and a 3-inch shadow appeared. The soul of a great saint. In the distance, Yuan Ling and the others looked at each other in shock. They could see that the 3-inch shadow was the soul of a great saint. However, Yi Xian's soul of a great saint was being tempered by a great tribulation. Arg! Yi Xian's body trembled. His soul of a great saint was flickering. The five-colored mysterious fire wrapped around his saint's soul and caused Yi Xian's saint soul to gradually crack. It was as if it was going to be burned to ashes in the next moment. Kacha! Terrifying cracks spread out on Yi Xian's saint soul. It was like a broken porcelain. The spreading speed was too terrifying. In a few breaths' time, Yi Xian's saint soul would collapse. Mysterious fire casting soul. Yi Xian roared in pain. He didn't treat the five-colored mysterious fire as a tribulation, because he understood during the 9 chaotic killings. The so-called chaotic saint tribulation was just a process of tempering oneself. Only then could one truly achieve the great saint realm. However, this kind of tempering was a life and death tempering. One wrong step could lead to death. If Yi Xian's willpower wasn't strong enough, his newly born soul of a great saint would also collapse. To put it bluntly, although the five-colored mysterious fire was destroying Yi Xian's newly formed soul of a great saint, it was also tempering his soul of a great saint. Although there was a risk of death, it was also strengthening his saint soul. As long as Yi Xian could endure the pain of his saint soul shattering every time and gradually forge his soul of a great saint to perfection, not only would he be able to survive this tribulation, but his own saint soul would also be extremely powerful. Bang! The soul of a great saint was finally shattered. Yi Xian's consciousness was in a trance in an instant. However, he endured the endless pain and finally condensed his saint soul again. The cycle repeated, the shattering and recombining. Yi Xian's mouth kept emitting painful groans. However, he persisted with his strong willpower and didn't let his saint soul shatter. This was a battle of willpower. It had nothing to do with one's cultivation. Only by enduring the pain of the five-colored mysterious fire's soul tempering could Yi Xian truly achieve the ultimate sublimation. Chapter 1089. Time passed bit by bit. Yi Xian's great sage soul was shattering and recombining, and the five-colored profound flames were becoming more and more terrifying. This process lasted for a total of 99,999 times, and the dangers involved were not known to outsiders. Buzz! The great sage soul was sparkling and translucent. The 3-inch illusory figure was extremely solid, as if it was made of diamond glass. It was emitting a dazzling light. Round and flawless, the 3-inch saint soul turned into Yi Xian's appearance. At this moment, he was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. An obscure aura was faintly overflowing. Even the surrounding starry sky was shattering. Devour! Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes, and the holy soul sitting cross-legged between his brows also opened its eyes. The five-colored flames that blotted out the sky whistled towards the center of his brows, and the 3-inch holy soul opened its mouth, violently and greedily devouring the five-colored profound fire into its own holy soul. Rumble! The 3-inch saint soul in Yi Xian's forehead stood up. The five-colored profound fire revolved around the soul, and an extremely terrifying aura burst out. Body and soul as one, saint of all saints. Yi Xian roared loudly. His hands formed the immortal technique. 9-colored lightning bloomed from his great sage body. The five-colored profound fire revolved around the great sage soul sitting cross-legged between his eyebrows. The combination of the two released an invincible light that pierced through the chaotic starry sky. Rumble. When Yi Xian's body and soul became one, the boundless aura of a great sage burst out. The starry sky was destroyed. Its terrifying power was simply unimaginable. Kacha. Yi Xian blankly stretched out his hands. 9-colored lightning flashed in his palms, mixed with the 5-colored profound fire. His body was bursting with unparalleled power. The aura of a great sage burst out in all directions. This is the great sage realm. Yi Xian murmured blankly. Rumble. Suddenly, before Yi Xian could examine his own cultivation, an aura that made him tremble to the extreme rushed towards him. He looked up in horror. Qi. 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 The starry sky was trapped while everything fell silent. Strands of the laws of chaos poured down like rain from the ages, and they poured down onto this expanse of the starry sky. Thump, thump, thump. It was as if the primal chaos heavenly drum was beating, as if the great Tao was rumbling. Yi Xian felt his holy soul tremble, and his eyes went blank for an instant. An extremely dizzy feeling appeared in his consciousness. At this moment, Yuan Ling and the others were speechless. They only saw Yi Xian in a daze in the depths of the starry sky, but the entire starry sky was extremely stagnant. An unimaginable pressure filled the chaotic starry sky. The great Tao asks the heart. This is the tribulation of the great Tao asks the heart. Luo Ho had already regained consciousness. His face was pale as he looked at the dazed Yi Xian in the starry sky. Brother Yi, this is the last hurdle. You can definitely pass it, right? Lu Bai whispered hoarsely as he looked firmly at the dazed Yi Xian in the starry sky. My disciple, it's been more than 3 million years. You've experienced so many hardships. Even though the tribulation of the great Tao asks the heart is terrifying, you must pass it. Yuan Ling trembled as he growled. Everyone could only see Yi Xian's dazed expression in the depths of the starry sky. He was motionless, as if he had turned into a clay sculpture. However, in Yi Xian's eyes, the chaotic starry sky he was in had already undergone an unimaginable change. The sky and earth had changed, and the scenery had changed drastically. Strands of the laws of chaos lingered in the starry sky, turning into 99,999 white jade stairs that appeared before his eyes. They were like pillars that supported the sky, like the peak of the sea of clouds. They were vast and boundless. The 99,999 white jade stairs seemed to run through the heavens. At the end of the Tongtian stairs, there was a white jade platform that stood tall. The great Tao asks the heart. To ascend the Tongtian, one tribulation, one difficulty, one tribulation. In the heavens, in the void of all laws, an ancient and heavy voice reverberated in Yi Xian's ears. It shook Yi Xian's saint soul, making it difficult for him to calm down. One tribulation, one difficulty, one difficulty, one difficulty? Yi Xian looked at the Tongtian stairs in front of him with heavy eyes. He was unable to recover from his shock. There were a total of 99,999 steps on the white jade staircase. If each step was truly more difficult than the last, then it was simply unimaginable. If the undying Heaven Lord can pass this tribulation, then I, Yi Xian, can definitely pass it too. Yi Xian whispered hoarsely. His eyes gradually became determined as he strode towards the Tongtian stairs. Bang! The first step. Yi Xian took the first step on the Tongtian stairs. The world in front of him changed again. He turned into an infant, returning him to the time when he was just born. Mother Yi was looking at him kindly. His heartless father looked on coldly with disgust. Using mortal family to disturb my invincible heart? Although Yi Xian had turned into an infant, his invincible heart had been forged long ago. He was not affected by the scene before him. Boom! The illusion disappeared and Yi Xian appeared once more. He resolutely took a second step forward. The illusion appeared again. Wind and clouds filled the sky. The north wind was biting cold. Mother Yi brought the young him and his siblings out of the Yi family. The 5-year-old's eyes were filled with hatred. The so-called hatred vanishes like smoke. Bang! The illusion dissipated once more, and Yi Xian took a third step. Bastard! You are a bastard. You are a child without a father. A group of children cursed at the young him. This was a humiliating illusion. Yi Xian slashed out with his saber and killed all the children that had appeared. The fourth step, the fifth step, the sixth step. Yi Xian's speed was extremely fast. His footsteps were steady and powerful, and every step he took would transform into something he'd experienced before. However, he wasn't disturbed by these illusions at all, and only wanted to pass through the tribulation of the great Tao. The invincible heart was invincible. The great Tao seeking tribulation was indeed terrifying. However, Yi Xian had experienced more than 3 million years of life and death. He had long seen through everything. Yi Xian faced the difficulties head-on. He witnessed the death of his family. He killed Xia Qingzhu with his own hands again. He also killed Fairy Guanghan with one saber strike. He even wept silently when he saw Lu Bai die. Sun Wukong transformed into heaven and earth. Tongtian fell. He experienced everything again. However, Yi Xian was still moving forward steadily. He did not stop at all. Throughout the ages, Yi Xian have experienced more than 3 million years of life and death. I walked out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. If a mere illusion can disturb my invincible heart, then Yi Xian should die under this tribulation. Yi Xian's voice was calm and hoarse as he steadily walked up the stairs. He'd walked over 90,000 steps, and even if he were to experience all of his past again, his mind wouldn't change in the slightest. What had happened in the past had happened. Regardless of whether Yi Xian regretted it or was unwilling to accept it, it was all in the past. People could not be entangled in the past. This was because the path was taken by oneself. Yi Xian could not change what had happened in the past. Therefore, he only looked at the present and the future. He would not let himself sink into the painful past. Chapter 1090. Thump, thump, thump. With every step Yi Xian took, the Tongtian staircase rumbled and shook. The so-called trials of the Great Tao had no effect on him at all. Actually, the trials of the Great Tao were the most terrifying of all the sacred tribulations of the primal chaos. This was because the tribulations directly targeted one's heart and would make the person facing the tribulations suffer unimaginable hardships. Unfortunately, Yi Xian had experienced far too many tribulations of the heart. In the past, he had refined his heart in the mortal world and walked the mortal world. He had experienced hardships that ordinary people could not imagine. The so-called trials of the Great Tao were not as terrifying as the first two tribulations in his eyes. This was because Yi Xian's heart had been tempered to the extreme. He was not affected by external factors at all. Even though the trials of the Great Tao targeted his heart, Yi Xian saw it as nothing more than that. It could not shake him at all. How long was the 99,999 white jade staircases? Yi Xian took large strides up without stopping. None of the illusions could stop him for even a moment. When he gradually reached the top, there were only 3 more steps that he had not passed. The 3 questions of the Great Tao. Heaven and earth shook as the sound of the Tao rumbled. Strands of ancient primal chaos laws poured down in torrents. The last 3 white jade staircases bloomed with dazzling light. Clearly, these last 3 steps were extremely difficult. If Yi Xian could cross these 3 steps, then he would have truly passed the sacred tribulation of the primal chaos and become a true saint of saints. How long had it been? Yi Xian's memories surged. His eyes were a little dazed. He had experienced more than 3 million years of cultivation, and in the end, he was only left with these last 3 steps. Yi Xian's eyes were a little unfocused. He sighed in his heart. He had experienced far too much in these 3 million years. There was love, there was pain, there was sorrow, and there was joy. From an inexperienced and ignorant youth to today's Tongtian Great Tao, only Yi Xian himself knew how difficult this journey was. 3 steps. As long as he could cross these 3 steps, he would become a saint of saints. Bang! Yi Xian's erratic gaze was fading away. He finally took the first step resolutely. Following that, an explosion sounded in his mind, and the scene in front of him instantly changed. Woo woo woo. Bones were piled up on both sides of the sea of blood. The souls of the dead were weeping, and the evil spirits were howling. Countless corpses floated in the sea of blood, and the wails of resentment and curses were ear-piercing. Yi Xian, give me back my life. Yang Jian, the Jade Emperor, the 12 ancient golden immortals, Niwa, Yuanshi and countless other living beings were cursing Yi Xian as the vengeful spirits of the dead. These were all people who had died at the hands of Yi Xian. There were so many of them that Yi Xian couldn't see the end of them. The sea of blood overturned the sky, and the souls of the dead howled miserably. These people who were once dead all appeared, and they lunged madly at Yi Xian. Their bloody bodies were exceptionally miserable. If I can kill you once, I can kill you a second time. Go to hell, all of you. The heaven-destroying halberd rolled out. In the face of the endless vengeful spirits, Yi Xian revealed a cruel and savage expression. When the halberd struck out, all the vengeful spirits of the dead disappeared. The vengeful spirits of the dead and the evil spirits of the dead confused the human heart. It was a tribulation of the great Tao. Perhaps this was a tribulation to others, but to Yi Xian, these people who had died at his hands were completely regarded as ants. His killing intent was already indestructible, so how could they mess with his mind? Boom! The sea of blood and corpses dissipated, and Yi Xian reappeared on the Tongtian staircase. At this moment, there were only 2 steps left beneath his feet. Bang! Yi Xian took the second step, and the scene in front of him changed again. This time, Yi Xian was stunned, and his body trembled slightly. Family, this tribulation was his family. Brother, you're so ruthless. Give me back the lives of my family of 3. Yi Linger's eyes were bleeding, and her husband and child were standing behind her. She stared at Yi Xian with resentment and cursed harshly. Xianer, do you still remember me? Mrs. Yi walked out of the void, her eyes empty and bleeding. She was questioning him. Brother, you're so heartless. The underling Yi Ping roared continuously. He appeared beside Yi Xian and raised his hand to strangle Yi Xian's throat with resentment in his eyes. Yi Xian, I want to ask you, have you ever really loved me? Fairy Guanghan walked out miserably and smiled at Yi Xian miserably. Yi Xian, you're so ruthless. It's fine if you kill me, but why do you want to kill my father too? Xia Qingzhu roared with resentment. At this moment, Yi Xian's body was trembling violently, and his mind was in turmoil. Although he knew that everything in front of him was fake, he couldn't control his emotions at all. Give me back my life. Son. Brother. Yi Ping strangled Yi Xian's neck tightly, while Mrs. Yi bit Yi Xian's flesh and blood. Yi Linger viciously reached out her hand and pierced through Yi Xian's heart, wanting to see if Yi Xian's heart was evil. Yi Xian, give me back my life. Xia Qingzhu and Fairy Guanghan continuously gnawed on the flesh and blood on Yi Xian's shoulder, while letting out resentful cries. Pain. Extreme pain. The pain did not come from his body, but from Yi Xian's soul. It was so painful that he could barely breathe. The great Tao is indeed powerful. Yi Xian allowed them to bite him, while he said those words of loneliness. He slowly raised his hand and pinched Yi Ping's neck. As Yi Xian exerted force with his fingers, Yi Ping's neck was broken and he died. Although I know that you're all fake, killing you with my own hands is indeed excruciating. Rumble. The heaven-destroying halberd was rolling in the air. His halberd pierced through the throats of these people. That murderous aura burst forth. His eyes turned pale as the illusion dissipated once again. Pfft! A mouthful of blood spurted out of Yi Xian's mouth. He seemed to have mercilessly killed his loved ones. Although Yi Xian also knew that it was all an illusion, he still felt an indescribable pain in his heart. The great Tao is indeed powerful, Yi Xian said in a hoarse voice as he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. To put it bluntly, the so-called Great Tao Tribulation was to draw out the thing that the person who was facing the tribulation was most afraid of facing. It would then mess up his mind and cause his soul to dissipate. Unfortunately, Yi Xian's heart was too firm. Even though he was extremely sad, he still walked out of the illusion. Bang! Yi Xian didn't delay. He took the third step, which was also the last step. Rumble! This time, there was no illusion. Only an illusory figure appeared in front of Yi Xian. The aura of the illusory figure was obscure, but it gave off an indescribable sense of heaviness. The Great Tao Tribulation. What is the Tao? Those who answer correctly will live, and those who answer incorrectly will die. The chaotic shadow spoke mercilessly as wisps of chaotic laws circulated around him. His voice constantly exploded in Yi Xian's ears. Chapter 1091. This was a question posed by the primal chaos laws. What is the Tao? Tao. It was a simple word, but it had thousands of interpretations. Everyone had a different understanding of the Tao. From life to death was the Tao. The changes of the 4 seasons were also the Tao. A blade of grass was the Tao. A grain of sand was also the Tao. There were too many interpretations of the Tao. From the stars and the universe to the leaves and sand, who could truly answer what the Tao was? This was an unsolvable problem. And also an unsolvable problem. No matter how Yi Xian answered, it might not be the correct answer. At this moment, Yi Xian remained silent. He naturally had his own understanding of the Tao, but his understanding was different from ordinary people. He was extremely disdainful of the so-called illusory Tao. Answer. Rumble. The primal chaos laws circulated as a heavy and emotionless voice sounded. Clearly this was the final tribulation of the great Tao. It did not want to give Yi Xian too much time to consider. Ha! Suddenly Yi Xian laughed. His laughter was contemptuous and somewhat arrogant. My words are the law, and my actions are the law. In the heavens and on the earth, only I am supreme. The strong will remain strong, and the weak will be dogs. This is the Tao of I, Yi Xian. Rumble. Yi Xian's voice echoed in the primal chaos. He did not consider anything at all, because this was his Tao and Tao. It was also something he had always believed in. What was the Tao? In Yi Xian's opinion, it was nothing more than bullshit. He didn't even bother to study what the Tao was, because he only believed that only by being strong enough to crush all living things in the heavens would he be able to do so. The primal chaos was silent. An ancient sigh came from the illusory figure in front of him. The 99,999 white jade stairs behind Yi Xian dissipated, and even the white jade platform beneath Yi Xian's feet disappeared with a loud bang. Wang. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. He was still in the primal chaos. All the tribulations had dissipated. Only streams of primal chaos light extended above his head. He passed. My disciple has passed? Yuan Ling roared excitedly. Holy tribulation of the primal chaos? Did he really pass the holy tribulation of the primal chaos? Luoho roared. Brother Yi. Lu Bai clenched his fists tightly as a look of relief appeared on his face. He knew that Yi Xian would definitely be able to survive the chaotic divine tribulation. How is that possible? How is this possible? Zhan Yunshan and the other chaos creatures murmured in shock. They couldn't believe their eyes. They had just witnessed a man go through a mutated chaos saint trial. Could it be that in the future, he will become the new strongest of all time? Zhan Yunshan trembled as he mumbled. When he thought of this terrifying possibility, his entire body trembled. Rumble. Before everyone could come back to their senses, an extremely shocking thing happened. The chaotic starry sky was trembling as boundless chaotic divine light whizzed toward Yi Xian, turning into a chaotic ocean that drowned him. At the same time, the sound of the great way reverberated from the celestial world. In the center of the distant chaotic world, the chaotic divine bell was ringing, reverberating for 9 times before it stopped. For a time, the creatures in the chaotic world were alarmed, because every time the chaotic divine bell was rung, it meant that something big had happened. Someone has passed the mutated great saint tribulation? In a mysterious palace, a majestic figure murmured in surprise. Could it be that a new strongest of all time is about to be born? In an ancient stone palace covered by black and yellow qi, a hazy woman muttered in a heavy voice. Time and space are reversed, and everything is falling. It's going to be another eventful era. An illusory man sat cross-legged on the top of the nebula. His figure was illusory, and there was a long sigh coming from his mouth. At the same time, some inexplicable changes had taken place in the chaotic world. Many ancient sects had some changes, and even sent out their disciples to find out who had passed the mutated Great Saint Tribulation, hoping to find this person. But no one knew that the person who had passed the mutated Great Saint Tribulation and caused the chaotic divine bell to ring was not in the chaotic world, but in a border area of the chaotic starry sky. The chaos was flowing, the golden light was shining, and the law of chaos was whistling in this primitive starry sky. Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the chaotic ocean, absorbing the power given to him by the law of chaos. His aura was rising wildly. This time lasted for 3,000 years. When the time came to 3,000 years, the vast chaotic ocean was dissipating. Only Yi Xian was still sitting cross-legged in the chaotic starry sky, cultivating with his eyes closed. Boom! Suddenly Yi Xian opened his eyes. His eyes were like the universe spinning in the heavens, and the starry sky was collapsing and regenerating. The might of the great sage spread out in all directions, and his entire body emitted an extremely dazzling brilliance. Immortal divine soul, indestructible body condense. Yi Xian stood up suddenly, and the power of the great saint burst out. The space-time tree grew continuously between his eyebrows, and the nirvana origin in his body turned into a force of nirvana that surged in his body like waves. His physical body was flawless, and his divine soul was solidified. Yi Xian absorbed the power of the law of chaos, and his whole body went through an unimaginable transformation. Strong, very strong. So strong that Yi Xian wanted to roar out loud. Yi Xian had a feeling that as long as he punched out, this chaotic starry sky would be shattered into dust. At this moment, in the eldritch world below him, as long as he stretched out his 5 fingers, he could crush the entire eldritch world in his hands. This feeling of power made Yi Xian extremely excited. He constantly examined his current cultivation, and his whole person fell into an indescribable feeling. This chaotic starry sky suddenly became intimate, and the law of chaos flowing in the starry sky was freely manipulated by him. It was as if he could turn the stars billions of miles away into dust with a single thought. Is this the power of the saint of all saints? Yi Xian stretched out his hands blankly, and the law of chaos flowed in his palms. It was as if when he clenched his 5 fingers, the universe would be crushed by him. Nirvana origin? The power of time and space. Suddenly, Yi Xian waved his hands and 2 supreme powers appeared. The nirvana origin was as black as ink, and filled with an extremely destructive aura, while the power of time and space was illusory, and the surrounding space-time was distorted to the extreme. He had shed his cocoon and turned into a butterfly, and sublimated to the extreme. Whether it was his cultivation or his physical body, it was so powerful that even Yi Xian himself trembled. He was absolutely certain that he was already in the great sage realm, and even his 2 strongest powers had undergone a qualitative increase. Buzz! Suddenly, Yi Xian stretched out his 5 fingers, and his eyes were deep in vicissitudes of life. A star billions of miles away mysteriously disappeared, and instantly appeared under his feet. Destroy! Yi Xian moved his mind, and the star suddenly turned into dust and disappeared. What a terrifying power! Yi Xian murmured in shock. Chapter 1092. It should be known that what he had absorbed was the chaotic celestial star, which was incomparable to the stars of the untainted world. Its size and firmness were unimaginable, but he could destroy it with just a thought. Only a great sage could have such power. Buzz! Yi Xian's eyes lit up. He took a step forward and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was in a strange starry sky. A galaxy? I actually moved a galaxy? Yi Xian murmured in a daze. His face began to redden. With just a thought, he broke through the barrier of time and space, and appeared in another galaxy. Ha ha ha! Yi Xian laughed wildly. He was extremely excited like a child. After stepping into the great sage realm, he had stepped into a new world. His whole person had undergone earth-shaking changes. To make a simple analogy, Yi Xian used to be like a frog at the bottom of a well. When he looked up, he could only see a little bit of the sky. When he jumped out of the well, he realized that the world was so vast that the bottom of the well, where he used to be, was insignificant. After laughing wildly, Yi Xian moved again, and instantly returned to the galaxy, where the untainted world was located. Yuan Ling, Lu Bai, and the others hurriedly shot toward him. Brother Yi, congratulations on passing the chaotic divine tribulation. Lu Bai smiled warmly. Disciple, Yuan Ling trembled and was speechless. He wanted to say some words of congratulations, but when the words came to his mouth, he only spat out these 2 words. However, from his trembling eyes, one could feel that Yuan Ling was extremely excited at the moment. Yi Xian, I Luo Ho did not misjudge you. Luoho said coldly. Luoho was a proud person. He and Yi Xian were enemies and friends. He would not say anything nice. He even regarded Yi Xian as a goal to catch up with. In his heart, he swore that he would surpass Yi Xian. Congratulations on becoming the saint of saints. Dong dong dong. The war drums of the 33rd Celestial Court were beating, and the sound was like a tsunami. Everyone in the Celestial Court knelt down in front of Yi Xian. Everyone's face was extremely excited. At the same time, Zhan Yunshan and the other creatures were quietly retreating. However, before they could leave the starry sky, Luoho coldly reminded them, Yi Daoyu, if you don't want to cause trouble for yourself, you'd better kill them all. Luoho you. Zhan Yunshan's expression changed drastically. He looked at Luoho with anger. After all, they were old acquaintances. He did not expect Luoho to want to kill them. That's right. Disciple, you have to kill them quickly. Otherwise, there will be trouble. Yuan Ling hurriedly agreed. Why? Yi Xian frowned. He wanted to ask about the origin of these people. But when he heard Luoho and Yuan Ling's words, it seemed that there was something wrong. You have the heaven-shattering void cauldron, and you have cultivated the immortal celestial scripture, and mastered the heaven-destroying halberd. Now that you have passed the chaotic divine tribulation, if the immortal heaven lord knows of your existence, he will not let you go. Luoho said coldly. Yes, not only for this reason, but the power of nirvana and the power of spacetime are also known as the forbidden powers. You have mastered these two powers, which will definitely attract the attention of the master of spacetime and the immortal heaven lord. If they send news of you back to the chaotic world, you will definitely suffer a great calamity. Yuan Ling said seriously. Run. As soon as Yuan Ling finished speaking, Zhan Yunshan and the others panicked and instantly fled into the distant starry sky. How would they dare to stay? Buzz! The starry sky was stagnant, and the laws were chaotic. Before Zhan Yunshan and the others could escape, the terrible chaotic laws intertwined, filled with Yi Xian's terrible murderous intent. Bang! With a glance, heaven and earth collapsed, and with a thought, all things were destroyed. This was the terrifying part of a supreme sage. Yi Xian did not even make a move, and just his thought had turned Zhan Yunshan and the others into ashes. At the same time, a black formation flag and the chaotic Qianquan bag also floated down, and were directly sucked into Yi Xian's hand. Chaotic spiritual treasure? Yi Xian played with the two items in his hand, and a strange light flashed in his eyes, and he casually put them into the bag. Everyone, please come to the Celestial Court for a chat. Killing more than 10 chaotic creatures with a thought also solved the potential trouble. At this moment, Yi Xian stepped into the Supreme Sage realm, and was in a very good mood. He invited Luoho, Yuan Ling and the others to return to the Celestial Court. Rumble! With the return of Yi Xian and the others, Mount Buzhou fell back into the untainted world, and the chaotic starry sky regained its peace again. The 33rd Celestial Court Jade Pool. Fellow Taoists, I plan to go to the chaotic world after 10,000 years. What are your plans? Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the top of the cloud, and his voice was calm. The seal set by Pangu has been broken, and I want to go back to the chaotic world with you. Yuan Ling was the first to answer. Me too, Luoho said in a deep voice. If Celestial Master Yu doesn't mind, Landia would also like to go with you. Landia smiled. Forget about me. There are too many disputes in the chaotic world, and this small untainted world can allow me to cultivate my body and mind. I'm not going to leave. Patriarch Sabodi hesitated for a while and replied, Brother Yi, I will naturally follow you wherever you go. Lu Bai smiled warmly. Sir, you promised to take us to the chaotic world. Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen hurriedly said, Okay. After asking for their opinions, Yi Xian nodded slowly. Yi Daoyu, the chaotic starry sky is boundless. Although you have stepped into the great saint realm, the chaotic starry sky is full of dangers. The journey to the chaotic world will take hundreds of thousands of years. If you get lost in the chaotic starry sky, you may not reach the chaotic world even after millions of years. You have to consider the dangers. Luoho solemnly reminded him. Millions of years? Yi Xian's expression changed slightly. He did not expect the chaotic starry sky to be so vast. It seemed that he had underestimated the so-called chaotic world. The so-called chaotic world is just a general name. The galaxy we are in is also in the chaotic world, but it is just an extremely remote border. In the center of the chaotic starry sky, there are countless vast galaxies, where thousands of races compete for the great Tao. It is also called the chaotic world. For example, the untainted world we are in is just a Taoist field in the eyes of some big sections. Yuanling added, "Please enlighten me." Yi Xian only knew a little about the chaotic world. He was about to go to the chaotic world, so naturally, he had to ask about the situation of the chaotic world. The so-called chaotic world. Yuanling and others began to describe it slowly. The chaotic world was divided into 5 star areas: Beichen Star Area, Nanda Star Area, Shiyuan Star Area, Easternmost Star Area, and the Central Domain. These 5 star areas had existed since ancient times, and their territory was vast and boundless. Cultivators below the Great Saint Realm might not be able to complete it even if they spent millions of years. There were many big sects, many orthodoxies, and thousands of races competing. The Great Tao was Tongtian. This sentence fully explained the vastness of the chaotic world. The chaotic world was not short of cultivation geniuses, let alone any chaotic treasures. As long as you were strong enough, you could get anything you wanted. It was a big world where thousands of great Tao competed. Only the strong were respected. The law of the jungle was perfectly interpreted in the chaotic world. Chapter 1093. Great Sage. This was an extremely heavy word. Even in the chaotic world, a great sage was an overlord. Wherever he went, he would be treated as a guest of honor by various sections. Of course, the Wufang Star area was vast and boundless. If one thought that this was the chaotic world, one would be gravely mistaken. The Wufang Star area was indeed vast, but it was just a drop in the ocean compared to the entire chaotic starry sky. The chaotic starry sky was so boundless that even the strongest of all time might not be able to reach the end of it. However, the Wufang Star area was the center of the chaotic starry sky, also known as the chaotic world. Here, thousands of Tao were in full bloom, and it was also the most prosperous area in the chaotic starry sky. Although the Wufang Star area was known as the chaotic world and was located in the center of the chaotic starry sky, it was extremely dangerous in the vast chaotic starry sky. Chaotic black holes, space-time squalls, ancient beasts of the starry sky, insect tribe of the chaos, in the boundless chaotic starry sky, there were all kinds of unimaginable dangers. Even if you were in the great sage realm, if you encountered these dangers, you would be in danger of dying if you did not avoid them early. Moreover, it was easy to get lost in the chaotic starry sky. If one got lost in the chaotic starry sky, sooner or later, one would be buried in all kinds of dangers. Yi Xian slightly frowned as he listened to the descriptions of Luo Ho and the others. Only now did he have some understanding of the primal chaos world, and it gave him a rough idea of the primal chaos starry sky. It was also at this time that Yi Xian finally understood why Luo Ho and others wanted to travel with him. Obviously, the journey back to the primal chaos world was too far, and the dangers it was filled with were unpredictable. With Yi Xian, a great sage, accompanying them, it would make their journey a little smoother. Disciple, the starry sky compass I gave you is a treasure. It records some dangerous places in the chaotic starry sky, and the location of the chaotic world. Yuanling said slowly, "Yes, if you want to travel in the chaotic starry sky, you must have the starry sky compass. Otherwise, if you get lost, it will be an unimaginable disaster." As Luoho spoke, he flipped his hand and took out his starry sky compass. As he shot out a beam of starlight, a vast starry sky array diagram appeared. This array diagram recorded the pattern of the chaotic starry sky. As for Yi Xian and the others, they were at a corner of the chaotic starry sky. Of course, this didn't mean that Yi Xian and the others were truly at the end of the primal chaos. This was just a place marked out by the cosmic compass. The true primal chaos was far too vast, so how could there be an end to it? Alright, we'll travel together 10,000 years later. Yi Xian nodded, and then everyone stayed in the celestial court, waiting for 10,000 years to go to the chaotic world together. Celestial Palace. The palace had no roof, and the stars filled the sky. Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the air. The aura of the great sage circulated around his body, and the surrounding space and time were slightly distorted. Yi Xian exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, and the aura of a great sage around him subsided. He had just stepped into the great sage realm, and was consolidating his cultivation base and controlling his power. Yi Xian chose to go to the chaotic world 10,000 years later in order to consolidate his cultivation base. Only when he could completely control the great sage realm would he go to the chaotic world. Buzz! Yi Xian flipped his hand, and the fourth small cauldron given to him by Yuan Ling appeared. Its aura was simple and unadorned, and its texture was complex. Even though Yi Xian had stepped into the great sage realm, he couldn't find out any useful information about this mysterious small cauldron. The first 3 small cauldrons have been integrated into the immortal scripture, bringing me 3 heaven-defying opportunities. Yi Xian murmured. Tribulation Transcender Transformation, Tribulation Transcender Devour, Nirvana Battle Armor. The first 2 were heaven-defying techniques, and the Nirvana Battle Armor was a chaotic treasure. What would this fourth small cauldron bring to Yi Xian? Buzz! Yi Xian flipped his hand, and the bronze immortal scripture rippled out. He slowly moved the small cauldron closer to the bronze immortal scripture, but the 2 things didn't react at all. What's going on? Yi Xian frowned. Buzz! The law of primal chaos circulated, and the power of nirvana emerged. Yi Xian tried to fuse the 2 things again, but he still didn't let the small cauldron integrate into the bronze immortal scripture. No. Yi Xian's eyes flickered, and he fell into deep thought. According to Yuan Ling, this bronze immortal scripture belonged to the immortal God Lord, and it recorded the immortal scripture created by the immortal God Lord. However, Yi Xian was very sure that the immortal God Lord didn't have the Tribulation Transcender Transformation, Tribulation Transcender Devour, and Nirvana Battle Armor. They were things created by the small cauldron integrating into the bronze immortal scripture. Legend had it that the immortal God Lord was able to create the immortal scripture because of the 3 Heavenbreaker cauldrons. The cauldrons were placed together with the bronze immortal scripture. The Heavenbreaker halberd, and Pango had stolen it. Could it be that the 4th cauldron isn't compatible with the bronze immortal scripture, but has some other function? Yi Xian frowned and murmured. Suddenly, Yi Xian waved the small cauldron in his hand, and a simple character entered his eyes. Although Yi Xian didn't recognize this character, he knew what it was called. This feeling came without any reason, as if he was born with this character. Burial, Yi Xian softly muttered, his eyes filled with confusion. 3 years passed, and Yi Xian continued to study the small cauldron, but he still couldn't find anything. He could only put the small cauldron away, waiting for a way to solve the mystery hidden within it. Flowing time. Rumble. The celestial worthy palace was shaking, and the power of time and space was howling. Yi Xian was channeling the river of time, and an illusory river gradually appeared. But in the next moment, Yi Xian suddenly withdrew the power of time and space, and a large amount of sweat appeared on his forehead. Huff, huff, huff. Yi Xian was panting heavily, and his eyes were extremely heavy. When he completely controlled the cultivation of a great saint, he wanted to see if he could channel the river of time. But just as he was about to succeed, a great terror between life and death attacked him. He could feel that in the river of time that was about to appear, there seemed to be a pair of ancient fierce eyes gradually opening. If he continued, he was afraid that he would have to face the owner of these fierce eyes. It's him? Yi Xian tried his best to calm his turbulent mind. He didn't forget that when his future self came to this world, there was also a pair of such eyes that appeared. Even his future self was extremely afraid, and hurriedly left this world. No, although I can channel the river of time now, it's impossible to reverse the past. I will definitely bring a fatal disaster to myself. Yi Xian whispered coldly. Yi Xian wanted to resurrect many people, but he still didn't act rashly, because this pair of ancient fierce eyes, hidden in the river of time, gave him a feeling that he would die without a doubt. After stepping into the Great Saint realm, Yi Xian didn't have the slightest arrogance. He was recalling the aura that his future self released. It was an aura that was countless times stronger than his. Back then, Yi Xian didn't feel anything because he was still very weak. But now that he had stepped into the Great Saint realm, when he recalled the aura of his future self, it gave him a feeling of reverence. And such a powerful future self was still so afraid of this pair of fierce eyes hidden in the river of time. At this moment, Yi Xian still couldn't face the owner of these fierce eyes. Although I can channel the river of time, if I dare to reverse the time, the owner of this pair of ancient fierce eyes will definitely attack me. Yi Xian murmured heavily. In the end, Yi Xian gave up because he didn't want to die. Although he wanted to resurrect the people of the past, facing the mysterious creature in the river of time, he could only die. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, 10,000 years had passed. When 10,000 years had passed, the gate of the celestial worthy palace was also rumbling open. Lu Bai, Luo Ho, Yuan Ling and the others had already been waiting outside the celestial worthy palace. Of course, not only Lu Bai and the others, but all the members of the 33rd Celestial Court had gathered outside the celestial worthy palace. When they saw Yi Xian, everyone's face showed a touch of sadness. Celestial worthy, take us with you. The members of the 33rd Celestial Court were pleading loudly. Yi Xian was about to leave the untainted world, and everyone wanted to follow Yi Xian. You don't have to do this. This chaotic starry sky is too dangerous. The shackles of the way of heaven have been broken. As long as you cultivate well, we will meet sooner or later. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. It was not that Yi Xian didn't want to take the celestial court with him to the chaotic world, but there were too many people in the celestial court, and it would be too noisy to go together. What's more, the chaotic starry sky was too dangerous. Even if Yi Xian was a great sage, he might not be able to protect them. If the 33rd Celestial Court were to be buried in the chaotic starry sky, this was not something that Yi Xian wanted to see. Yi Daoyu, it's time for us to set off. Luo Ho said in a deep voice. After today's farewell, we will meet again in the future. If I, Yi Xian, can become the strongest of all time, all of you will rise to the heavens. Yi Xian made a promise, stepped out, and shot toward the chaotic starry sky. Chi. Lu Bai and the others rushed into the sky, followed Yi Xian's footsteps, and rushed into the mysterious and unknown chaotic world. Chapter 1094. The chaotic starry sky had existed since ancient times, and the universe was immortal. It was vast and boundless, and the chaotic stars rumbled and rotated according to the unchanging laws of time. The long river that ran through the star field rumbled and surged. The chaotic law flowed in the starry sky, and from time to time, it would evolve into chaotic wind, thunder and fire, annihilating countless stars into ashes. The chaotic starry sky was too vast and too terrifying. Even the most powerful figures of all time might not be able to explore all of it. In this chaotic starry sky, all living things were as insignificant as dust. Rumble. Suddenly, a figure swept past this galaxy, and the saint power that could explode the starry sky burst out. Countless stars were turned into ashes, and the surging star river set off sky-high waves. This person's hair was disheveled, and his silver-white hair was slightly dirty and messy. His black clothes were somewhat tattered, and he was constantly using a teleportation technique to escape. Roar! The starry sky exploded, and the roars of beasts rang out. Hundreds of terrifying giant beasts chased after the figure in front of them, roaring continuously. Giant beasts of the starry sky. They were a terrifying creature that lived in the chaotic starry sky. Although they had unimaginable power, their intelligence was extremely low. They would devour any living creature they saw. These giant beasts were millions of miles in size. They galloped in the chaotic starry sky, and countless stars were turned into ashes, creating an extremely terrifying wave of energy. Damn it, do you really think I'm afraid of you? The black-robed figure stopped, and a cold light flashed in his black eyes under his hair. He stopped running, and turned back to slap the hundreds of giant beasts of the starry sky behind him. Bang! The starry sky exploded, and the chaotic divine power covered the sky. The palm contained the power of a great saint, and dozens of giant beasts of the starry sky were instantly beaten to a bloody pulp. However, this person's attack did not make the giant beasts of the starry sky retreat. Instead, they roared again and again, and rushed toward the black-robed figure. Roar! At the same time, the roars of beasts came from all directions again. Thousands of giant beasts of the starry sky of different shapes surrounded the black-robed figure. You beasts are simply haunting me. The black-robed great saint's terrifying aura burst forth. When the starry sky squall blew his hair, it revealed his handsome appearance. Yi Xian. Who else could this person be but Yi Xian? But the strange thing was Yi Xian went to the chaotic world with Lu Bai and others. How could he be chased by thousands of giant beasts of the starry sky alone? This was a long story. 100,000 years ago, Yi Xian and others entered the chaotic starry sky together. The first 10,000 years were peaceful. Yi Xian moved towards the chaotic world according to the direction marked by the starry sky compass. There was no danger along the way. The group cultivated as they traveled. Although the journey was long, they did not feel bored. And as time passed by 15,000 years later, it was unknown if Yi Xian had a calamitous physique, but they actually encountered the Chaos Zergs whizzing past. One Chaos Zerg was not terrible, but hundreds of millions of Chaos Zergs were terrible. When these terrible Zergs gathered together, even a great saint would have to take a detour in the face of such terrible creatures. If he made a mistake, he would be buried in the mouth of the Chaos Zergs. When Yi Xian and others found the Chaos Zergs and wanted to escape, it was too late. Although the Chaos Zergs were weak, their individual cultivation was at most Daoyuo Jinxian. But the Chaos Zergs were endless. If you killed one Zerg, 10 more would be born immediately. In the face of the endless Chaos Zergs, Yi Xian could only take everyone to escape. Unfortunately, these Chaos Zergs were extremely bloodthirsty and did not have much intelligence. The hundreds of millions of Chaos Zergs were extremely sensitive to auras. They chased after Yi Xian and others crazily. If Yi Xian was alone, he could barely escape, but he could not give up on the people who followed him. Lu Bai was needless to say. Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen were his subordinates who followed him from the human realm. Yuan Ling, Landia, and Luo Ho also had too many connections with him. A great battle was unavoidable. Yi Xian displayed the might of a great sage, and crazily killed these primal chaos bugs. In the end, he managed to carve out a bloody path. However, that battle was too tragic. Even Yi Xian suffered heavy injuries, and he was completely separated from Lu Bai and the others. The most serious problem was that in the battle with the primal Chaos Zerg, he had lost the galactic compass. Although he had killed his way out and teleported countless galaxies, he had been lost in the primal chaos starry sky. Furthermore, Yi Xian was very worried about whether Lu Bai and others could escape this calamity. If they were buried in the Chaos Zergs, Yi Xian would definitely be heartbroken. However, Yi Xian vaguely remembered that he had killed his way out and sent Lu Bai and others away. Then he escaped alone. As long as they did not encounter any other danger, they might be able to preserve their lives. It had to be known that the Chaos Zergs were one of the dangers in the Chaos Cosmos. This was not just a saying. Even a great saint would die if they encountered such danger. Yi Xian was able to kill his way out of the encirclement, and this was because he'd passed through the mutated chaos holy tribulation. His cultivation was terrifying to an unimaginable degree, and if it was any other great sage, they would have long since been torn apart by the primal chaos bugs. This disaster also made Yi Xian realize how terrifying the chaos cosmos was. Even with his great saint cultivation, he was proud of, it was difficult to move in this vast and boundless chaos cosmos. Yi Xian was lost in the chaos cosmos for 100,000 years. He could not tell where he was at all. During this time, he encountered too many dangers. Black holes in the starry cosmos, chaos astral winds, and now giant astral beasts. Yi Xian avoided the first two dangers early on. These giant astral beasts were simply dogskin plasters. At first he just killed one casually, and thought it would be fine. But who knew that these giant astral beasts were extremely sensitive to auras? Thousands of giant astral beasts appeared from all directions and chased after him with no regard for their lives. With Yi Xian's cultivation as a great saint, it was naturally impossible for him to take these giant astral beasts, which were only 3 tribulations of the heavenly Tao, seriously. With just a few thoughts, he killed them all. But what happened next made Yi Xian feel extremely heavy. After he killed a group of giant astral beasts, it took less than a few thousand years for another group of even more terrifying giant astral beasts to appear and chase after him. Moreover, these giant astral beasts were not afraid of death. It was simply tiring for Yi Xian to deal with them. After killing a group, a stronger group would appear. At this moment, the giant astral beasts that surrounded Yi Xian were already at the 7 tribulations of the heavenly Tao. Yi Xian could not help but wonder if he would attract a great saint-level giant astral beast if he continued to kill. Even if he killed a great saint-level giant astral beast, would there be another existence that surpassed the great saint level? Chapter 1095. At that time, he would not even know how he died. Finally, Yi Xian was terrified. It was not that Yi Xian was terrified. It was just that in the face of this kind of endless pursuit, even if Yi Xian had the cultivation of a great sage, he would be buried in the mouth of these giant beasts of the starry sky sooner or later. Yi Xian would never put himself in danger. Every time he faced death, he was forced by the situation. But this time, he did not have to face these giant beasts of the starry sky head-on. Moreover, after tens of thousands of years of observation, Yi Xian found one thing. Every time he escaped, he would be found by these giant beasts of the starry sky. There must be a reason that he did not know. As for the reason, Yi Xian could not figure it out even after thinking hard. Now his only way was to find the chaotic world quickly. Maybe the chaotic creatures there knew how to get rid of these giant beasts of the starry sky. Go. Yi Xian did not stop at all. He moved away again. He did not want to be entangled with these giant beasts of the starry sky. These giant beasts of the starry sky roared again and chased after Yi Xian. This was an endless chase. Yi Xian had learned the power of these giant beasts of the starry sky. Although he lost the starry sky compass, he was not fleeing aimlessly. Yi Xian vaguely remembered that Yuan Ling said that if he was really lost in the chaotic starry sky, as long as he found the North Star and kept going south, there was a certain chance that he could reach the chaotic world. The North Star Yi Xian had been found 10,000 years ago. He followed the instructions of the origin spirit and continuously moved south. However, after 10,000 years, he didn't even see the shadow of the primal chaos world. Nor did he see any living beings along the way. Humans were afraid of losing hope. Yi Xian understood this principle very well, so he continuously encouraged himself and moved towards the south. No matter how the space beasts behind him chased after him, he completely ignored them. Time passed in a blink of an eye. Another 100,000 years passed, and Yi Xian did not know how many galaxies he had moved. According to his calculation, he had crossed 2 star areas, but there was still no trace of the chaotic world. The great sage was indeed tyrannical, but there was a limit to it. Yi Xian had been running for his life for 200,000 years, and this made him feel exhausted. The thousands of giant beasts of the starry sky behind him were also panting, but they still looked at Yi Xian with bloodshot eyes. Logically speaking, even Yi Xian, a great sage, was a little tired. These giant beasts of the 7 tribulations of the heavenly Tao should have been left far behind by Yi Xian. However, these giant beasts of the starry sky had a kind of innate divine sense, which was extremely powerful. They fed on stars all the way, constantly replenishing their energy in their bodies, and always persistently chasing after Yi Xian. Even if Yi Xian was lost by them, it would take a long time for them to appear behind Yi Xian again. It was as if there was a rope that tied Yi Xian to them. No matter where Yi Xian went, he could not get rid of them at all. You abominable beasts! Yi Xian cursed in a low voice. Finally, he could only shake his head helplessly and move away again. 10,000 years later, buzz! Yi Xian moved out. His eyes were already a little dull, and he looked forward casually. But the next moment, his withered eyes suddenly lit up, and a bright aura appeared again. Chaotic world? Yi Xian roared excitedly, and his body was trembling extremely, because in front of him, a vast and boundless world appeared in his eyes, and at this moment, it was blooming with bright light. This was a vast and boundless star area, and even Yi Xian could not see the end of it. There were countless galaxies in this star area, and an unimaginable vitality was rushing toward Yi Xian. Howl! Suddenly, thousands of giant beasts of the starry sky chased after him, which also made Yi Xian suddenly sober up. He stared at these giant beasts of the starry sky fiercely, and instantly moved toward the chaotic world. Howl, howl, howl! Looking at Yi Xian entering the bright star area in front of them, thousands of giant beasts of the starry sky roared again and again. They did not chase after Yi Xian immediately. Instead, there was a trace of fear in their fierce eyes. However, this trace of fear came and went quickly. The intelligence of these space beasts was too low. In the end, they continued to chase after Yi Xian and entered this dazzling and flawless star domain. Nanda region chaotic world. The boundless land was boundless. Towering peaks rose from the ground, and clouds of stars covered the sky. The sun and stars hung in the east, shining a dazzling golden light, illuminating this world. Qi, qi, resplendent multicolored light, and flowing primordial light. One figure after another shot through the heavens and earth. From time to time, one could see all kinds of strange creatures roaming the heavens and earth. There were humans with horns, monsters with beast heads and human bodies, creatures with wings, and even demonic beasts flying across the sky. There were too many unknown creatures living in this world, and there were also many huge cities standing on the vast land. Roar! Heaven and earth exploded, and all living things trembled. The sky rumbled and shook, and Yi Xian instantly appeared in this world. But before he could stand still and look around, thousands of giant beasts of the starry sky had already surrounded him. Each of the giant beasts of the starry sky was millions of miles in size. When thousands of giant beasts of the starry sky appeared in this vast world, they immediately covered the originally clear sky. Are you done? Yi Xian's eyes were as gloomy as water. He had been on the run for 200,000 years, and his heart had long been filled with anger. At this moment, he finally came to a place suspected to be the chaotic world. The anger in his heart could no longer be suppressed, and all of it broke out at this moment. Roar! Thousands of giant beasts of the starry sky had no spiritual intelligence. They stared at Yi Xian fiercely with red eyes. With an earth-shaking roar, these terrible giant beasts of the starry sky madly rushed toward Yi Xian. Go to hell, all of you! Yi Xian's face was cold. With a palm strike, the sky collapsed. He directly slapped 10 giant beasts of the starry sky into blood mist, and the world was raining blood. Cut the sky! Yi Xian's sword fingers joined together, and directly condensed a terrible sword radiance. With his sword command, hundreds of giant beasts of the starry sky were cut into 2 halves, and fell to the vast land. No one knew how many mountains and rivers had collapsed, causing terrible damage. Roar! These giant beasts of the starry sky were instantly enraged. They all rushed toward Yi Xian without fear of death. When they opened and closed their bloody mouths, they spat out starlight that exploded the world, and hundreds of millions of miles of mountains and rivers collapsed. Bang! Yi Xian punched out, and dozens of giant beasts of the starry sky were blown up by him in the sky. Then he shot out again, and these giant beasts of the starry sky continued to chase Yi Xian crazily. At the same time, the Nanda region was completely in chaos. Countless horrible figures rushed to the sky from all over the place, and all of them rushed toward Yi Xian and the giant beasts of the starry sky. Chapter 1096. Above the firmament, stars filled the sky. With every step Yi Xian took, the heaven and earth within 100 million miles rumbled and shook. Behind him, hundreds of giant beasts of starry sky were madly chasing after him. Actually, if Yi Xian wanted to kill these beasts, it would be as easy as raising his hand. However, he didn't do so because he could already feel a dozen auras rushing towards him. Yi Xian's mind was extremely delicate, and he was a person who planned before acting. He had just come to the chaotic world, and was unfamiliar with everything here. He wanted to use these giant beasts of the starry sky to get in touch with the creatures in the chaotic world, which was his real purpose. Kill. Yi Xian fought fiercely in the sky, the aura of a great saint bursting forth. His palms shattered mountains and rivers, and hundreds of giant astral beasts died tragically under his palms. However, this was not the end. Yi Xian's eyes flickered slightly. He could already sense over a dozen auras rushing in his direction. This gave rise to some thoughts in his mind. Rumble. Yi Xian was no longer running away. He came to a stop and charged towards the hundreds of giant astral beasts. Blood rained down from the sky as the giant astral beasts roared in anger. The world and Yi Xian were completely locked in battle. At the same time, chi, more than a dozen rays of light shot out, and more than a dozen creatures of different shapes appeared. When they saw Yi Xian fighting against hundreds of giant star beasts, everyone's face was filled with horror. Great sage. This person is actually a great sage? When will my Nanda realm have another great saint? He's crazy. Doesn't he know that giant star beasts can't be killed? Over 10 chaos creatures growled in shock. They couldn't believe their eyes. Trembling, they watched Yi Xian kill those space beasts. Bang! The heavens shook and the earth quaked. The mountains and rivers were destroyed. When Yi Xian displayed the invincible might of a great saint, he killed hundreds of giant beasts of starry sky in just 3 breaths of time. A rain of blood poured down, and the corpses of the giant beasts of starry sky smashed towards the ground. The dozen or so creatures of chaos turned pale. They trembled under Yi Xian's might, and didn't come back to their senses for a long while. Shock, awe, shock, and a strange light appeared in their eyes. They looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. Yi Xian of the 10,000 Spirit Celestial Palace greets Senior. A middle-aged man dressed in black bowed to Yi Xian. Lin Miaoxian of Wondrous Spell Nation greets Senior. A young woman smiled sweetly and bowed to Yi Xian. The 12th of the Sacred Path of Taichu greets Senior. This was a young man in a white robe. He had an otherworldly temperament. Greetings, Senior. I'm Ming Yi from the Heavenly Demon Temple. The man with horns on his head and wings on his back had a ferocious look on his face. He was clearly a member of the demon race. The dozen or so creatures of chaos of various shapes and sizes bowed to Yi Xian. Every one of them was extremely respectful, because the person before them was a terrifying great saint. Even if they had great orthodoxies behind them, they didn't dare to be disrespectful in the slightest. What year is it today? Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back. His expression was indifferent and unperturbed. His eyes were like the universe, giving off an ancient aura that caused one's heart to tremble at a glance. Hearing Yi Xian's question, these people looked at each other. Surprise flashed in their eyes. Lin Miaoxian's eyes moved. She hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. Senior, today is the 322nd year of the 10th epoch of chaos. May I know where Senior resides? Are you from the Great Southern Dou region? The 10th epoch, 322nd year? Yi Xian muttered in a low voice. His expression looked extremely calm, but in reality, his heart was already in turmoil. He didn't know what the 10th Yuan Hui was, but the words 322 million years had truly shocked him to the extreme. Everything changes. I didn't expect that when I woke up, 100 million years had already passed. Time really flies. Yi Xian sighed. Lies, big lies. Yi Xian could only withdraw the big lie. As the saying goes, he used the tiger's skin to pull a banner. When he arrived at a strange place, he had to scare these creatures of chaos. After all, he was too unfamiliar with the chaotic world, and it was even more impossible for him to tell these people his true identity. 100 million years? You're from 100 million years ago? Lin Miaoxian's expression changed greatly. She looked at Yi Xian with surprise and doubt in her eyes. Obviously, she didn't believe him. Not only Lin Miaoxian, but the rest of the people also changed their expressions greatly. Obviously, they didn't believe Yi Xian's words. A great sage from 100 million years ago was simply an existence that they couldn't imagine. Feeling the fluctuating emotions of these creatures of chaos, Yi Xian raised his eyebrows. He knew that he might have exposed some flaws, which made him keep silent. As the saying goes, the more one talks, the more mistakes one will make. Yi Xian understood this very well. Senior, are you an ancient great sage? Lin Miaoxian asked tentatively, looking at Yi Xian with a touch of doubt in her eyes. 100 million years ago was the time when the Lord of all spirits achieved the Great Way. He really dominated the entire chaotic world and officially stepped into the era of eternal power. In that battle, the chaotic starry sky collapsed endlessly. No one knew how many peerless figures died in the hands of the Lord of all spirits. Was Yi Xian in front of her a certain peerless figure from 100 million years ago? The peak of the Saint Realm, proud of the world. With me Yi Xian, there is heaven. Spirit extinguishing halberd, immortal robe, Saint Kings and 9 heavens. Yi Xian looked up to the sky and whispered. The aura of a great sage burst forth, and the world changed color at this moment. Hundreds of millions of divine thunder raged between heaven and earth, illuminating Yi Xian's boundless majesty. Time flies, reincarnation for eternity. At the end of those distant years, I fell as a Saint King. When I woke up again today, I didn't expect that you juniors didn't know my name. Yi Xian whispered in a lonely voice, and a touch of desolation rippled out, giving people a sense of mystery and majesty. Yi Xian pretended to be lonely and vicissitudes of life, and directly came up with a big lie. Anyway, he had the cultivation of a great sage, and these people would not be able to guess his true identity. Since Yi Xian had already bragged to the sky, he simply bragged to a bigger place. However, Yi Xian was not talking nonsense, because Yuan Ling had casually mentioned that a shocking battle took place in the chaotic world 100 million years ago. And no one knew how many peerless figures died in that battle. He simply put this incident on himself to answer these people's questions. The peak of the Saint Realm, proud of the world. With me Yi Xian there is heaven? Spirit extinguishing halberd, immortal robe, Saint Kings and 9 heavens. Lin Miaoxian and the other chaos creatures gasped in shock. Ji Hao's words shocked them way too much. Ji Hao's words were filled with the power of the chaos, and even their souls were shaking intensely when they heard those words. You are a Saint King? Lin Miaoxian asked in a trembling voice. Her ruddy face turned pale, and she looked at Yi Xian with excitement, with unspeakable awe in her eyes. Chapter 1097. Just as Yi Xian was about to make up an excuse to answer, the sky of the Nanda territory suddenly shook, and a gate of heaven appeared. Howl! Thunder roared and beasts roared. The sky of the Nanda territory dimmed, and the vast gate of heaven opened. Thousands of giant beasts of the starry sky rushed out of the gate of heaven, staring at Yi Xian fiercely with red eyes. Oh no! When these giant beasts of the starry sky appeared, Lin Miaoxian and others were horrified. They had no time to guess Yi Xian's terrible identity. Only then did they remember that Yi Xian had just killed the giant beasts of the starry sky. It's really annoying. The giant beasts of the starry sky appeared again, which helped Yi Xian get out of trouble. But this time, the giant beasts of the starry sky had the cultivation of the 8 tribulations of the heavenly way. Just the aura that erupted from them seemed to be able to crush this world. Howl! The giant beasts of the starry sky came, and they seemed to be endless. This also made Yi Xian really want to kill them. He had already entered the chaotic world, and naturally, he would not run away in embarrassment from these endless beasts. Die! Yi Xian stepped on the sky, and when he stretched out his 5 fingers, he directly summoned the endless stars of the chaotic starry sky, and the mighty and boundless power of the great sage burst out with a rumble. Whoosh! Rumble! Red fire meteors and stars filled the sky. Thousands of stars fell from the chaotic starry sky. As Yi Xian waved his hand at the giant beasts of the starry sky, thousands of red fire stars fell toward these giant beasts of the starry sky. Bang! 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 Heaven and earth shook, and the giant beasts of the starry sky howled. Even if thousands of giant beasts of the starry sky, which were comparable to the 8 tribulations of the heavenly way, they were all buried under these red fire stars. Howl! The giant beasts of the starry sky of the 8 tribulations of the heavenly way were completely enraged, and they all rushed toward Yi Xian desperately. The power that could shatter heaven and earth was blooming, which gave people a feeling of extreme horror. You bastards! Are you trying to bully me because I've been asleep for too long and my cultivation is no longer the same as before? Yi Xian said in a cold voice. His 5 fingers transformed into a giant hand of the heavens and slammed down on these giant beasts of the starry sky. Hundreds of giant beasts of the starry sky would turn into a bloody mist every time it slammed down. His terrifying cultivation of the great sage realm was undoubtedly displayed. Blood splattered across the sky, shaking heaven and earth. Yi Xian had gone through a mutated chaotic divine tribulation and was considered invincible in the great saint realm. Lin Miaoxian and the others were dumbfounded when they saw his cultivation. Could this person really be a saint king? No way. I don't feel his saint king aura. But the great sage, how could he possess such terrifying might? If I'm not mistaken, these giant beasts of the starry sky already have the cultivation of the 8 tribulations of the little saint realm. There are thousands of giant beasts. Even a great sage would find it hard to deal with them. But this senior is simply too ferocious. Lin Miaoxian and the others whispered in horror. They looked up and saw Yi Xian killing thousands of giant beasts of the starry sky, as if he was chopping vegetables and melons, which shocked them even more. Suddenly, Lin Miaoxian woke up quickly and shouted anxiously at Yi Xian. Senior, don't kill anymore. Don't kill anymore. Your aura has been locked onto by the giant beasts of the starry sky. Even if you kill these giant beasts, there will be more powerful ones coming next time. In the sky, Yi Xian was killing in all directions, and the bodies of the giant beasts of the starry sky kept falling to the ground. When he heard Lin Miaoxian's reminder, his eyes turned slightly. He had long suspected that there was a secret behind why he was constantly being hunted by the giant beasts of the starry sky. Now it seemed that it was true. Fellow cultivators, quickly activate the spirit trapping formation. Lin Miaoxian hurriedly woke the others up, and then took the lead to shoot out a golden light. The others hurriedly followed suit. A total of 12 golden lights soared into the sky, and a vast and ancient aura burst out at this moment. Strangely enough, when Lin Miaoxian and the others shot out 12 golden light, the remaining dozen giant beasts of the starry sky that were killed by Yi Xian seemed to have encountered something terrifying. They frantically fled towards the gate of heaven and disappeared in the sky of the great southern Do region in an instant. Senior, you're invincible. We juniors admire you very much. However, you can't kill any more giant beasts of the starry sky. Otherwise, it will definitely bring a great calamity to the great southern Do region. Lin Miaoxian hurriedly flew to Yi Xian and knelt down. Her posture was extremely humble and respectful. Obviously, Lin Miaoxian and the others had mostly believed the big lie that Yi Xian had just told. They were even more in awe because of the cultivation that Yi Xian showed. This was the case in the chaotic world. It fully explained the principle that the strong were always strong, and the weak were like dogs. The so-called lies told by the strong were the truth. However, a question arose in the hearts of Lin Miaoxian and the others. Why did this man, who was suspected to be a holy king, not even know the most basic knowledge of the chaotic world? Yi Xian's mind was so sensitive that he could naturally feel the doubts of Lin Miaoxian and the others. This also made him sigh and say, life and death, existence and death. In the past 100 million years of sleep, I have forgotten a lot of things. I was reborn from nirvana, just to find the lost memories. Looking at Yi Xian's lonely appearance and the shocking aura of the great saint around him, the doubts in the hearts of Lin Miaoxian and the others disappeared, and they all showed a humble and awe-inspiring posture. Senior, you have woken up from nirvana. Although your past memories are missing, you will be able to recall them sooner or later and recreate your majestic demeanor. I would like to invite you to Miofa Kingdom as a guest. First, we would like to welcome you, and second, we would like to help you get rid of the aura left on you by the giant beast of the starry sky. Please allow us to do so, Lin Miaoxian hurriedly said. Suddenly, Yi Maoyuo of the 10,000 Spirit Palace snorted and said, Lin Miaoxian, Senior Yi is a peerless figure from 100 million years ago. Now that he has reappeared in the world, he should be welcomed by the 10,000 Spirit Palace. Is this the place for you to speak? Yes, the 10,000 Spirit Palace is the ruler of the world. The master of 10,000 Spirit Palace is the ruler of the chaos. He should be welcomed by the 10,000 Spirit Palace. Saint Dao 12 of Taichu echoed coldly and looked at Lin Miaoxian contemptuously. Don't go too far. Lin Miaoxian reprimanded the two of them when she heard their mocking words. However, there was great fear in her eyes. The master of 10,000 Spirit Palace is the ruler of the chaos. Unless the Miofa Kingdom wants to be an enemy of the 10,000 Spirit Palace, Senior Yi must be welcomed by the 10,000 Spirit Palace today, Yi Maoyuo said coldly. Obviously, the dozens of creatures present each represented a major orthodoxy. Judging from Yi Maoyuo's attitude, it was obvious that the 10,000 Spirit Palace had unimaginable power in the chaotic world, and these major orthodoxies did not dare to offend them. At this moment, Yi Xian looked on coldly. He carefully found that although Yi Maoyuo's cultivation was only at the 6th tribulation of the heavenly Tao, and Lin Miaoxian was at the 8th tribulation of the heavenly Tao, she was faintly afraid of this person. Chapter 1098. Interesting. Yi Xian sneered in his heart. It seemed that the chaotic world was not a peaceful place. As long as there were people, there would be disputes. I'm interested in the Mystic Spell Kingdom. Sorry to bother you. Yi Xian looked at Lin Miaoxian with a smile. As Yi Xian's words fell, Lin Miaoxian was overjoyed, while Yi Maoyuo frowned. Although he was somewhat dissatisfied with Yi Xian's decision, he did not dare to show it casually. After all, the person in front of him was a real great sage, who was most likely a great sage who had fallen from the Sage King realm. Yi Maoyuo was just a small deacon of the Myriad Spirit Palace. He could not afford to offend such a big shot. Senior, you may not know that the chaotic world is now dominated by our Myriad Spirit Palace. It's better for you to visit our Myriad Spirit Palace. When the Palace Master knows of your arrival, he will definitely receive you in person. Yi Maoyuo said in a deep voice. Perhaps Yi Maoyuo was used to being revered by others. He had relied on the prestige of the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace to do whatever he wanted. At this moment, although he was using honorifics, he appeared to be high and mighty. Are you threatening me? Yi Xian narrowed his eyes slightly. Seeing the smile on Yi Xian's face disappear, Yi Luo didn't have the slightest bit of fear. After all, he had the backing of the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace. As long as he didn't disrespect Yi Xian, he didn't believe that Yi Xian would punish him. I dare not. It's just that Senior has been sleeping for 100 million years. You may not know that the Palace Master of the Myriad Spirit Palace has stepped into the ranks of the strongest throughout the ages, and is the real ruler of this world. As the saying goes, a fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. Our Myriad Spirit Palace is very sincere in inviting Senior. Yi Maoyuo said neither arrogantly nor humbly. Although he was only a small saint, and could not be compared with Yi Xian, he was representing the Myriad Spirit Palace at this moment. Naturally, he would not lose to the Myriad Spirit Palace's momentum. In the fight for the Great Tao, if you don't move forward, you will fall behind. Not to mention a small saint like you. Even the Lord of all Spirits had to respectfully call me Taoist friend, before he became the strongest throughout the ages. How dare you talk nonsense in front of me? Bang! Yi Xian's eyes moved, causing the entire world to distort to the extreme. The power of primal chaos exploded out, and Yi Luo didn't even have the time to scream before exploding into a bloody mist that filled the sky, causing his soul to scatter between heaven and earth. Yi! You! Who dares to insult the might of a great sage? He's digging his own grave. Killed. Senior. I'm impressed. Lin Miaoxian and the others bowed down. How could they dare to show any displeasure? Looking at the respectful looks on Lin Miaoxian and the others' faces, Yi Xian nodded his head in satisfaction. He did not kill Yi Maoyuo out of impulse. He remembered that Yuan Ling had mentioned that great sages were overlords in the chaotic world. If anyone dared to disrespect him, he would kill them in a single blow, to protect his dignity as a great sage. Yi Xian had just bragged to the heavens. If he were to remain unmoved by Yi Maoyuo's threats, wouldn't he be looked down upon by others? killing to establish his authority. That was Yi Xian's way of doing things. It would also show his dignity as a great sage. Moreover, Yi Xian did not believe that the 10,000 Spirit Palace would become enemies with him, a great sage, because he had just killed a nonentity. Little girl, didn't you say that you would invite me to Miaofa Kingdom? Let's go now. Yi Xian pulled Lin Miaoxian in front of him, and then disappeared with a step. However, the appearance of Yi Xian had also spread throughout the Nanda territory. After all, the appearance of a great sage in the Nanda territory was not a big deal. But it was not a trivial matter either. If any orthodoxy could rope in Yi Xian, it would strengthen the foundation of the orthodoxy. The Nanda territory was one of the 5 regions of the chaotic world. There were many ancient orthodoxies here, and there were countless opportunities of the chaos. These orthodoxies were all existences of a Yuanhui. The history of their existence was unimaginable. There were even legends that some of these orthodoxies were the inheritances of the last Yuanhui. They were the foundation of these orthodoxies, and the history that had to be traced back was unimaginable. What was a Yuanhui? A Yuanhui was equivalent to 129,300,000 years. This was a heavy number, and it was an ancient period. In layman's terms, a Yuanhui was an era. There was an old legend. There were 12 Yuanhui in the chaotic universe. When the 12 Yuanhui ended, the reincarnation of the heavens would be reopened. Everything would be buried, and everything would return to the origin. Of course, this was just a legend. Whether it was true or not was still unknown. However, there was one thing that the chaotic creatures respected. That was, every Yuanhui would create an eternal strongest, and this eternal strongest would dominate the Yuanhui and become a supreme existence. Now it was the 10th Yuanhui. The eternal strongest who dominated the chaotic world was called the Lord of all spirits. He had dominated the chaotic world for 100 million years. He was also a new eternal strongest, and was in an extremely prosperous period. Perhaps some people would ask, what about the 9 eternal strongest before the Lord of all spirits? This was a long story because it was related to the chaotic rules. The chaotic rules. Every Yuanhui could only produce 1 eternal strongest, and this person would dominate the chaotic world for 129,300,000 years. Before this, no one knew where the strongest of all ages had gone. When an era ended, these eternal strongest would withdraw from the stage of the chaotic world. There was rarely any news about them. However, these eternal strongest's orthodoxies were still in the chaotic world, and they were transcendent existences. The current 10th era was dominated by the Lord of all spirits. The All Spirits Heavenly Palace was also created by the Lord of all spirits, and he was also respected by all the chaotic creatures. Wondrous Spell Kingdom, auspicious and colorful, thousands of auspicious chi. Fairy islands were bobbing up and down, and countless handsome men and beautiful women were shuttling through the clouds. In the Sutra Pavilion of Wondrous Spell Kingdom, Yi Xian was reading a thick book of chaotic history, and was quickly learning about this magnificent world. The 10th era, the Lord of all spirits, eternal strongest, dominating 129,300,000 years? Yi Xian put down the book of chaotic history, and his eyes changed slightly. No one knew what he was thinking. Chapter 1099. Mystical Spell Kingdom Sutra Pavilion. Yi Xian held the book of chaotic history and kept flipping through it. He learned about all the major events of this Yuanhui from the book of chaotic history, and knew why he had been chased by the giant beasts of the starry sky. The so-called giant beasts of the starry sky were creatures that lived in the chaotic starry sky. They fed on the spirits of the stars. Their intelligence was extremely low, but they had enormous power. There was a saying in the chaotic world that the giant beasts of the starry sky could not be killed. As long as you killed one, it would attract a large number of giant beasts of the starry sky to avenge you. These giant beasts of the starry sky had extremely unique magical powers. They could shuttle through the chaotic starry sky. Even if you were in the Holy King realm, you could not escape from them. To avoid the pursuit of these giant beasts of the starry sky, the only way was to wash oneself in the Tai spiritual spring and strip off the aura of the giant beasts of the starry sky. There was no other way. I see, Yi Xian murmured. No wonder Lin Miaoxian took him into a pool when he had just arrived at the myriad spell kingdom. It turned out that she wanted to wash the aura left by the giant beasts of the starry sky. Yi Xian held the book of chaotic history and said, "This book of chaotic history is useless to others, but it is no different from a treasure to me." After reading through the book of chaotic history, Yi Xian also had a general understanding of the situation in the chaotic world. Now the chaotic universe had experienced the 10th Yuan Hui. 100 million years ago, the Lord of all spirits achieved the Great Tao and became the 10th strongest of all time. He dominated this Yuan Hui for 189,300,000 years. The chaotic war 100 million years ago was when the Lord of all spirits achieved the Great Tao. Countless powerful figures became the bones under the feet of the Lord of all spirits. Yi Xian told a big lie that he was the Holy King 100 million years ago, which happened to cover up his identity. Naturally, Lin Miaoxian and others believed most of it. After all, Yi Xian's cultivation was indeed terrifying. However, Yi Xian also knew that his identity could not withstand scrutiny. If there were really people from 100 million years ago, they would naturally know that he was lying. Fortunately, Yi Xian had read through the Book of Chaos and found that it was an era where many things were waiting to be done. Too many people had died in the war 100 million years ago. There were not many people left, so no one could expose Yi Xian's identity for the time being. Perhaps some people would ask why such an unimaginable battle would occur when the Lord of all spirits stepped into the strongest of all ages 100 million years ago. The reason was simple. According to the laws of chaos, only one aeon could be born in each aeon. When the 10th aeon began, the various great sects and orthodoxies naturally wanted to fight for the seat of the aeon's aeon. The chaotic world was not short of amazing figures. Some of them were the leaders of various sects. Some of them were the overlords who rose against the natural order. And some of them were cruel and merciless heroes. Everyone wanted to become the strongest of all ages in the 10th aeon. As the saying went, if you did not advance, you would fall behind. On the road to becoming the strongest of all ages, you could only reach the top by stepping on the bones of others. Unfortunately, those amazing figures were all buried. The Lord of all spirits stepped on their bones and rose against the natural order. He truly stepped into the ranks of the strongest of all ages and truly dominated the 10th aeon. As for Yi Xian, he learned something from reading the Book of Primal Chaos. The first aeon of the chaotic universe was dominated by the Lord of Chaos, who was also the first strongest of all ages. The second aeon was called the Lord of Destiny. The third aeon was called the Lord of Time and Space. The fourth aeon was called the Lord of Immortality. The fifth aeon was called the Lord of Human Tao. And so on until the Lord of all spirits in the 10th aeon. The entire chaotic universe had produced 10 strongest of all ages. And the Lord of all spirits would dominate the 10th aeon for 128,930,000 years. Now only more than 300 million years had passed. There were still more than 900 million years before the Lord of all spirits ended his reign. More than 900 million years. This was an unimaginable period. All the great sects and orthodoxies had to submit to the Lord of all spirits' palace. And the Lord of all spirits' palace was also the strongest great sect in the 10th aeon. Of course, the strongest was also because of the Lord of all spirits. The other 9 great orthodoxies left behind by the strongest of all ages still remained in the chaotic world. These great orthodoxies had once ruled a aeon. Even though the 10th aeon was ruled by the Lord of all spirits, these great orthodoxies were also transcendental existences. They were not afraid of the so-called Lord of all spirits' palace. Of course, the 9 great orthodoxies would not offend the Lord of all spirits' palace. After all, the 10th aeon was ruled by the Lord of all spirits. This was also an unwritten rule. Speaking of which, every time the new aeon opened, it was an era of darkness and turmoil, because the strongest of all ages had yet to be born. All the great figures of the generation were fighting for this seat. Blood stained the mountains and rivers, and the starry sky exploded. In that dark and turbulent era, The 5 regions of chaos were turned into mountains of corpses and seas of blood. The cruel law was vividly displayed. 200 million years after the 10th Aeon opened, the Lord of all spirits ended the dark and turbulent era. He was the real ruler of the 10th Aeon, and became the supreme existence of the chaos. When Yi Xian saw the records in the Book of Chaos, a question arose in his mind. Where were the 9 strongest of all ages before the Lord of all spirits? After Yi Xian kept reading the ancient books in the scripture pavilion, he finally found a fragmentary record in a book of chaos history. The 9 strongest of all ages ended the aeon that they ruled, and went into seclusion. It was said that they were comprehending the mystery of the chaos great Tao, but no one knew if it was true. However, Yi Xian was very clear about one thing. Back then, Pan Gu stole the treasure of the Lord of all ages from the Immortal Heaven Palace. And this was after the Lord of all spirits achieved the great Tao. Moreover, the Lord of Immortal Heaven sent 3,000 demons to pursue Pan Gu, which meant that the Lord of all ages was still in the chaotic world, but no one knew their whereabouts. Yi Xian also found another thing that he expected. That was, there was no news about Pan Gu stealing the immortal scripture, and no one in the chaotic world knew about it. Moreover, Yi Xian found a very surprising thing in the Book of Chaos history. That was, the so-called Pan Gu did not refer to a person, but to a clan. The Pan Gu clan. Yes, it was the Pan Gu clan. The so-called Pan Gu was a member of the Pan Gu clan, and it was said that the Pan Gu clan had an unimaginable origin. It was said that they were the descendants of the Lord of Chaos of the first Aeon. Whether this legend was true or not was unknown, but the strength of the Pan Gu clan was recognized in the chaotic world. Although there were few people in the Pan Gu clan, each of them was extremely terrifying, and had the chaos great divine sense. Even the 10,000 Spirit Palace did not dare to offend them easily. In the scripture pavilion, Yi Xian frowned tightly. He learned about the chaotic world from many ancient books in the scripture pavilion, but the more he learned about it, the more he felt that the chaotic world was too complicated. Chapter 1100. Yi Xian kept sorting out the information that was useful to him, and it took him a while to come back to his senses. According to the Book of Chaotic History, every Yuan Hui can only produce one supreme expert. Doesn't that mean that I have no chance? Yi Xian frowned. The law of chaos was unique throughout the ages, and this was an eternal truth. Every Yuan Hui could only produce one supreme expert. The supreme expert of the 10th Yuan Hui was the Lord of all spirits. There were still more than 900 million years before his reign. Only when the 11th Yuan Hui began would a new supreme expert be born in the next Yuan Hui. More than 900 million years is too long. How can I, Yi Xian, wait? Yi Xian paced in the Sutra Depository Pavilion with a gloomy face. It was impossible for him to wait for 900 million years. Could it be that only one supreme expert can be born in a Yuan Hui? Yi Xian murmured coldly, and an unpredictable look flashed across his eyes. Yi Xian was a person who did not believe in fate. He came to the chaotic world to climb to the top, and he set a great goal for himself. He wanted to become an existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the immortal God Lord and the others, and even surpass them. In the fight for the great Tao, if you don't advance, you will fall behind. I, Yi Xian, have never believed in fate. Even if the supreme expert of the 10th era has been born, I, Yi Xian, do not believe that I will succumb to the Lord of all spirits. Yi Xian said firmly. Yi Xian never believed in fate, let alone the so-called law of chaos. He only believed in himself. He believed that as long as he had invincible power, the so-called law of chaos could be completely broken. He believed that he could break all the shackles and truly step into the ranks of the supreme experts of the eternal era. He would never succumb to anyone. What primal chaos rule? What Yuan Hui can only produce one ultimate expert? All of that is bullshit. Wherever I, Yi Xian, am, all rules and restrictions will be broken. Yi Xian roared as a resolute light flashed through his eyes. Even though Yi Xian was ambitious, he knew that he needed to take things one step at a time. Only by constantly breaking through his own cultivation could he catch up to these ancient masters. That why Yi Xian exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He suppressed his troubled thoughts. Right now, the most important thing for him was to cultivate quickly so that he could become a saint ruler as soon as possible. Then he could find Liu Bai and the others, because only with great power could he really stand in the chaotic world. Yi Xian believed that Liu Bai was definitely not dead. With Liu Bai's talent, as long as he entered the chaotic world, he would definitely become the most dazzling light. Yi Xian was only worried about Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen. Their cultivation was at the top of the untainted world, but they were too weak in the chaotic world. If they died in the chaotic world, he would be extremely sad. As for Yuan Ling, Luo Ho and the others, they were originally from the chaotic world. As long as they could enter the chaotic world, naturally, they would not be in any danger. Yi Xian suppressed his troubled thoughts. Now what he needed to do was to face the various orthodoxies in the Great Nanda domain. After all, his big lie had attracted the attention of all the orthodoxies in the Great Nanda domain. Senior Yi, senior sister has come out of seclusion and is waiting for you in the Mystic Arts Palace. Do you have time to meet her? Lin Miaoxian gently knocked on the door of the Sutras Pavilion. Okay. Yi Xian put down the book of chaotic history. He already had a preliminary understanding of the chaotic world. Sooner or later, he would have to face the various characters in the chaotic world. Now he would start with the Mystic Arts Kingdom. Mystic Arts Kingdom. Auspicious clouds where colorful and spiritual chi filled the sky. Auspicious clouds were intertwined in the Mystic Arts Kingdom. Its vast territory was hundreds of millions of miles away, and there were millions of disciples in the kingdom. From the outside, the entire Mystic Arts Kingdom looked like a city in the sky, standing in the clouds, sacred and inviolable. Compared to the 33rd Celestial Court and the Mystic Arts Kingdom, the 33rd Celestial Court was not worth mentioning at all. Perhaps in the eyes of mortals, the Mystic Arts Kingdom was simply terrifying. But in fact, among these orthodoxies, the Mystic Arts Kingdom was an extremely weak orthodoxy. Speaking of the Mystic Arts Kingdom, it was founded by a woman. This woman was extremely talented. Her cultivation was Tong Tian, and she went straight to the Saint King realm. She was also known as the Mystic Arts Saint King. Unfortunately, in the Battle of the Great Tao 100 million years ago, the Mystic Arts Saint King fell in the chaotic starry sky, and the Mystic Arts Kingdom was unable to recover from the setback. As time passed, the Mystic Arts Kingdom was unable to establish itself in the Central Territory and could only move to the Nanda Territory. The current master of the Mystic Arts Kingdom was called the Mystic Arts Saintess, and her cultivation was only at the Saint King realm. In the chaotic world's cultivation system, the Saint realm was divided into 4 levels: Small Saint, Saint King, Great Saint, and Saint King. Those below the 9 heavenly Tao tribulations were called Small Saints. However, the chaotic creatures called them the 9 Chaos Tribulations. Each tribulation could increase one's cultivation by 1 level until they stepped into the Saint King realm. The Saint King realm was somewhat interesting. This was the realm between Small Saint and Great Saint. The 9 heavenly Tao tribulations were also the 9 chaos tribulations that the chaotic creatures called them. Every person who stepped into the 9th tribulation would attract the Chaos Saint Tribulation. However, the Chaos Saint Tribulation was too terrifying, and very few people could survive it to become a great saint. Therefore, anyone who stepped into the 9th tribulation would suppress their cultivation to avoid attracting the Chaos Saint Tribulation. Their realm was called the Saint King realm. In the Saint King realm, one would have touched upon the profound meaning of the Great Saint realm, and could even grasp some great saint techniques. Although they could not unleash the power of a great saint, they were still existences that surpassed small saints. There were too many people in the Saint King realm, but very few dared to go through the Chaos Saint Tribulation. After all, the Chaos Saint Tribulation was not just a matter of words, and it contained great terror between life and death. The Mystic Arts Saintess was a Saint King, and she was barely supporting the entire Mystic Arts Kingdom. However, compared to the other orthodoxies, the Mystic Arts Kingdom was too weak, and everyone could bully them. They were no longer as powerful as when the Mystic Arts Saintess was still alive. In the Jade Palace, auspicious clouds rippled. Under Lin Miaoxian's guidance, Yi Xian walked all the way to the Mystic Arts Palace. Along the way, he attracted the attention of the Mystic Arts Kingdom's disciples. Is this the great saint from 100 million years ago? His bearing is indeed extraordinary. The great saint is indeed terrifying. I only took a glance at him, and I felt my Saint King's heart thumping. All kinds of whispers could be heard, but Yi Xian only glanced at the Mystic Arts Kingdom's disciples with a hint of disappointment in his eyes. The highest cultivation level was only at the first tribulation of chaos. Many of them were quasi-saints, and many of them were Daluo Jingxian, and all heaven golden immortals. If the Mystic Arts Kingdom was in the Eldritch world, it could be called the number one orthodoxy. However, in the chaotic world, it was pitifully weak. Chapter 1101. Of course, not everyone in the chaotic world was an immortal or a saint. There were countless mortal kingdoms in the vast land, because they were the foundation of all things. Even the chaotic world was no different. However, the history of the chaotic world was too long, and the spiritual chi in the 5 regions of chaos was unimaginably rich. Mortals could live for thousands of years, which was something the untainted world could not compare with. Soon, under the guidance of Lin Miaoxian, a vast palace appeared in front of them. A woman in a white veil was standing in front of them, accompanied by 2 girls. The woman was wearing a white veil. Her skin was like carved ivory, and her eyes were like stars. She gave people a sense of coldness and purity, exuding a cold and noble temperament. It was a pity that the woman was wearing a white veil, so people could not see her face clearly. However, the temperament she showed made people guess that the face behind the veil was absolutely beautiful. Senior sister, Senior Yi is here. Lin Miaoxian hurried to the saintess and bowed to her. Lin Miaoxian greets Senior Yi. The saintess bowed to Yi Xian. Her voice was slightly cold, but she did not lose her respectful attitude to Yi Xian. Lin Miaoxian, Lin Miaoxian. Yi Xian smiled slightly and said, I'm a little curious. Your names are only 1 word apart. Is there any other relationship? Senior Yi, Senior Sister Miaoxian and I are sisters. It's just that she has become the lord of the Miaoxian kingdom, so I call her Senior Sister. Lin Miaoxian quickly replied, It turns out that you are sisters. Only then did Yi Xian nod his head, as if he'd come to a sudden realization. Yi Xian's words were unintentional, but when the sisters heard it, they had a different feeling. This also made Lin Miaoxian feel suffocated, but she still bowed to Yi Xian and said, Senior Yi Xian, I have already prepared a banquet to welcome you. Senior, please. Lin Miaoxian first waved her maidservant away, and the 2 sisters welcomed Yi Xian into the Hall of Wonders. Mystic Arts Palace. Spiritual energy was faintly discernible as clouds and mists swirled around. A white jade table was placed with some immortal fruits and spiritual items, and there was even a jug of immortal wine. In the entire Hall of Mystic Arts, apart from the Lin sisters and Yi Xian, there was no one else standing here. Silence, silence, a kind of oppressive silence. Yi Xian sat cross-legged with a smile on his face. Opposite him were Lin Miaofa and her sister. The 3 of them were silent for a while, but the atmosphere in the Mystic Arts Palace was slightly oppressive. Which ancient sect does Senior Yi belong to? Lin Miaofa was the first to break the silence. I've been asleep for 100 million years, and lost a lot of my memories. I can't answer your question. Yi Xian continued to lie. Looking at Yi Xian's confident expression, Lin Miaofa's aura turned cold. Senior Yi, let's not beat around the bush. As a supreme saint, you shouldn't lie to us juniors. I've checked the history of 100 million years ago, but I've never found a saint king called Yi Xian. The pinnacle of the saint realm, proud of the world. With me, Yi Xian, there is heaven. Lin Miaofa said in a deep voice. The soul-extinguishing halberd, the immortal robe, the saint kings and the 9 heavens, Lin Miaoxian continued. When the 2 girls finished speaking, they both looked at Yi Xian with a strange expression. Although the words you left behind are very shocking, there was no such person as you in the battle of the Great Tao 100 million years ago. Lin Miaofa flipped her hand and a book appeared. She pushed it in front of Yi Xian and said, This ancient history records many peerless figures from 100 million years ago. All those above the Supreme Saint realm are recorded, but your name isn't in it. How long are you going to lie to us? Humph. Yi Xian snorted coldly. He saw through the two girls' little tricks at a glance. This was just a lie. They wanted to test his background. Perhaps if it were someone else, they would have exposed their flaws at this moment. However, Yi Xian had experienced too much scheming. How could he not see through the two girls' childish tricks? What was called an old fox? What was called a cunning old fox? What was called a scheming old fox? These words could be used on Yi Xian. It should be known that he did not just focus on cultivation. His mind and shrewdness had reached an unimaginable level. Although the two girls had lived longer than him, they were simply worlds apart from Yi Xian in terms of scheming. It's up to you whether to believe it or not. Do I have to explain it to juniors like you? Yi Xian's smile disappeared, and his great sage aura suddenly erupted. The two girls' expressions suddenly changed, and they hurriedly apologized to Yi Xian. Senior Yi Xian, please calm down. My senior sister just did it unintentionally. I hope senior won't blame her. Lin Miaoxian hurriedly apologized to Yi Xian. Senior Yi Xian, it's my fault. Lin Miaofa hurriedly got up and bowed to Yi Xian. I don't like you talking to me with a veil. Yi Xian said coldly. This? Lin Miaofa's breath stopped. Obviously, Yi Xian wanted to see her appearance, which also made her hesitate. However, this hesitation did not last long, because she knew that in front of a great sage, all disobedience could lead to a fatal disaster. Finally, Lin Miaofa lifted the veil on her face, and a stunning face also appeared in front of Yi Xian's eyes. What kind of appearance was this? When Lin Miaofa's appearance was revealed, even Yi Xian's expression was slightly startled. Devastatingly beautiful? Heaven and earth lost their color? It was as if everything would sink under Lin Miaofa's face. Her beauty could not be described with any words at all. Cold and lonely, like an iceberg, she gave people a feeling that she could only be seen from a distance and could not be profaned. Her beauty simply made everyone not dare to look directly at her. But they also wanted to remember this beauty forever in their mind. It wasn't that Yi Xian hadn't seen a beauty before. The beauty of the Guanghan fairy was unparalleled in the three realms. In Yi Xian's knowledge, there was no woman whose appearance could compare to the Guanghan fairy. However, today, Lin Miaofa revealed her appearance, which made Yi Xian finally know that someone who could compare with the moon fairy really existed. Lin Miaofa's beauty was definitely not less than the moon fairy's. The same transcendence, the same coldness, as if all the beautiful things in the world were condensed on Lin Miaofa's body. If there was a difference between Lin Miaofa and the moon fairy, it was that Lin Miaofa had the aura of a powerhouse. She didn't have the delicate feeling of the moon fairy, but this also added a touch of seduction to Lin Miaofa, making people want to melt this iceberg saintess. The sense of conquest that could stir people's hearts was simply too tempting. Looking at Yi Xian's startled expression, Lin Miaofa smiled bitterly, because she had long known this result, because no one could stay calm under her beauty, and this beautiful face had brought her too much trouble. If Yi Xian was not in the great sage realm, Lin Miaofa would not reveal her appearance in any case. Unfortunately, in the next moment, Yi Xian regained his composure, and was not fascinated by Lin Miaofa's appearance. Instead, he looked at the woman with a playful expression. This also caused Lin Miaofa to be stunned. She didn't think that Yi Xian would actually be able to recover from her appearance. This also caused her to think highly of Yi Xian. Tap tap tap. Yi Xian's 5 fingers tapped on the table, constantly making rhythmic sounds. He looked at Lin Miaofa in front of him, and a strange smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. A sense of uneasiness suddenly rose in the hearts of Lin Miaofa and Lin Miaofa. Yi Xian said bluntly, I see something in your eyes. This thing is called ambition, and it also contains unwillingness. Tell me, what do you want to ask of me? As the saying goes, one does not visit a temple without a reason. Yi Xian did not believe that the sisters in front of him were here to welcome him. If they did not have a request, then it would be a joke. Lin Miaofa was worthy of being the master of an orthodoxy. She quickly suppressed the uneasiness in her heart and bowed to Yi Xian. Senior Yi, I would like to invite you to join the Wondrous Spell Kingdom and become the Grand Elder of our Wondrous Spell Kingdom. Why should I? Yi Xian smiled, but his smile was very playful and revealed a touch of strangeness. Looking at Yi Xian's playful smile, Lin Miaofa gritted her teeth slightly, as if she had been prepared for it, because she knew that no great sage would stay in her small orthodoxy. I am yours and Miaoxian is also yours. The two of us can serve you for 1,000,000 years. Is this condition okay? Lin Miaofa said calmly. The chaotic world was so cruel that only the strong could survive. The Wondrous Spell Kingdom had declined, and if they wanted to rise again, they must have the support of a great sage. Unfortunately, Lin Miaofa was just a little great sage. She knew that if she attracted the chaotic divine tribulation, she would not be able to survive it. Therefore, this was the only chance for the Wondrous Spell Kingdom to rise again, even if it meant sacrificing her and Miaoxian. Lin Miaofa believed that Yi Xian would definitely agree, because her beauty was not unique, but there were only a few in the Nanda Great Domain. Moreover, Lin Miaofa firmly believed that men had dirty thoughts, and with her sister Lin Miaoxian, few men could resist this temptation. Therefore, Yi Xian would definitely agree to join the Wondrous Spell Kingdom and become the Grand Elder of the Wondrous Spell Kingdom. Chapter 1102. The strong were always strong, and the weak were like dogs. This was the law of the chaotic world. No matter how beautiful or powerful you were, you had to bow down in front of the strong. Tap, tap, tap. Yi Xian's 5 fingers were tapping on the table, making rhythmic sounds. Lin Miaofa was waiting for Yi Xian's reply, her face calm. Lin Miaofa was not a weak woman, but a sage-level figure. She could support the Wondrous Spell Kingdom for thousands of years by herself. Her willpower alone was incomparable to ordinary people. Are you making a deal with me? Yi Xian smiled slightly. Whether it's a deal or power, you protect the Wondrous Spell Kingdom for 1,000,000 years, and us sisters will serve you for 1,000,000 years. This is a better deal than a deal. Lin Miaofa spoke calmly, as if she was talking about a very casual thing. She was not a chaste woman, nor was she a slut. She just wanted to survive in this cruel, chaotic world, so she had to pay the price she could afford. In fact, with Lin Miaofa's beauty, many great saints wanted to take her as a concubine. However, these great saints were from various orthodoxies, and no one would sincerely protect the Wondrous Spell Kingdom. They would only treat her as a plaything. The most crucial problem was that she cultivated the wondrous technique Celestial Sutra. If anyone could dual cultivate with her, their own cultivation would be greatly enhanced. Coupled with her peerless beauty, it naturally attracted the covetous eyes of many great saint-level figures. The wondrous spell Immortal Sutra. This was a type of dual cultivation method. If a man and a woman cultivated at the same time, their cultivation speed would double. This was why the female disciples of the ingenious spell nation were the best cultivation vessels in the eyes of the other great sections. This was also the reason why the Wondrous Spell Kingdom began to plummet after the fall of the Wondrous Spell Sage King. From time to time, there would be strange disappearances of their disciples. Apparently, they were kidnapped and used as furnaces. As the saintess of the Wondrous Spell Kingdom, Lin Miaofa naturally became a fat piece of meat in the eyes of others. If it were not for Lin Miaofa's superior means and constantly dealing with these orthodoxies, she would have long become a plaything of some expert. Therefore, the Wondrous Spell Kingdom had fallen into an extremely dangerous situation, which led to the conversation between Lin Miaofa and Yi Xian. Heh. Suddenly, Yi Xian smiled contemptuously, but in the next moment, his smile disappeared. He looked at Lin Miaofa calmly and said, "Do you think you are qualified to make a deal with me?" What do you mean?" Lin Miaofa's expression changed as a bad feeling suddenly rose in his heart. "Your ingenious spell kingdom is nothing more than an ant in my eyes. What qualifications do you have to negotiate with me?" Yi Xian said coldly. "If I want you to live, you will live. If I want you to die, you will die. Do you think I will agree to your conditions, just because of your so-called beauty?" Yi Xian sneered, his face full of ferocity. Thud, thud, thud. Looking at Yi Xian's unfriendly look, Lin Miaofa and the other woman retreated again and again, and their originally calm faces began to become flustered. His body and mind trembled as he came to a sudden realization. Lin Miaofa's face was pale, and his eyes flashed with fear. He completely understood what had happened, and looked at Yi Xian with fear in his eyes. Lin Miaofa had forgotten one thing, a very important thing. She had always thought that Yi Xian would agree to her conditions, but she had forgotten that Yi Xian in front of her was not a kind man. To make an analogy, Yi Xian was like a tiger, and Lin Miaofa and the other woman were just lambs. The lambs actually went to negotiate with the tiger, which was simply sending the lambs to the tiger's mouth. It was an act of seeking death, life and death, and the strong were respected. This was the rule of the chaotic world. But Lin Miaofa was so confident that she had forgotten this rule. Tisk tsk tsk. Looking at Lin Miaofa and the other woman's frightened appearance, Yi Xian whispered contemptuously, "You are a scheming little girl, but unfortunately, you can't see the reality. Although you have great ambition in your heart, you don't have the strength to match it. Come here, kneel down." Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and slowly waved to the two women. You. Lin Miaofa's expression changed, and there was a look of humiliation in her eyes. Holy light overflowed from her body, and she faintly looked like she was about to fight. Although her cultivation was not as high as Yi Xian's, she was still the master of an orthodoxy. How could she bear to be humiliated by Yi Xian? Kneel down. Yi Xian's voice was cold, and the power of the great saint burst out, pressing down on Lin Miaofa and the other woman. This also made Lin Miaofa spit out a mouthful of blood, and her figure suddenly became staggered. Bang! Yi Xian stretched out his 5 fingers, and suddenly sucked the two women in front of him. With a gloomy look on his face, his hands viciously pinched the two women's necks, and directly lifted them into the air. Crack! Yi Xian's hands tightened, and a terrifying force exerted on the two women's necks, causing their throats to crack. Their limbs were constantly kicking in the air, but they could not escape from Yi Xian's restraint. Life and death are in my hands. You have no right to negotiate with me. The only thing you can do is to kneel down and submit to me. Bang! Yi Xian suddenly threw the two women to the ground, and the entire mystic arts palace shook. 2 human-shaped craters were formed on the white jade crystal floor. Pft! In the face of Yi Xian's ruthlessness, the two women let out a muffled groan, and traces of blood flowed from the corners of their mouths. They collapsed to the ground like dead dogs, and did not recover for a long time. Thud thud thud, like the tolling of the bell of the dead, like the sound of death. Yi Xian slowly walked to the two women, and a cruel smile appeared on his face. Bang! Suddenly, Yi Xian raised his right foot, and ruthlessly stomped on Lin Miaofa's beautiful and lifeless face. His foot ruthlessly crushed Lin Miaoxian's face. How terrifying was Yi Xian's strength! When his foot landed on Lin Miaofa's face, she immediately let out a muffled groan, and half of her head sank into the ground. No matter how humiliated she was, she could not break free from Yi Xian's foot. Damn bastard. I'm going to kill you. Lin Miaofa roared in anger, and holy light burst out from her body. However, under Yi Xian's supreme saint power, she was as small as an ant. How could she resist Yi Xian's humiliation? Kill me? Do you have the ability? Bang! Suddenly, Yi Xian smiled cruelly. He raised his right foot, and ruthlessly stomped on Lin Miaofa's face again. The ground shook, and Lin Miaofa's entire head was stomped into the ground by Yi Xian. Come, get up and kill me. Yi Xian whispered with a smile. Bang! 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 A terrifying thing happened. Yi Xian had a smile on his face, but his wide feet continuously stepped on Lin Miaofa's body, causing Lin Miaofa to let out a mournful cry of pain as the bones in his body shattered inch by inch. Suddenly, Yi Xian stopped his cruel actions. He stretched out his 5 fingers and directly grabbed Lin Miaofa's hair, and pulled out half of her body from the ground. Chapter 1103. Her hair was messy and her face was swollen. With Yi Xian holding her hair in the air, Lin Miaofa's mind was in a daze. She felt like she was in a nightmare that she couldn't wake up from. Ruthless beating and wantonly humiliating. Such a ridiculous thing actually happened to Lin Miaofa. Not to mention Lin Miaofa, who was in a daze. Even Lin Miaoxian was frightened and didn't come back to her senses for a long time. Don't. Lin Miaoxian instantly woke up and cried out in grief. She looked at Yi Xian with eyes full of fear. Bang! Yi Xian grabbed Lin Miaofa's hair with his left hand and slapped Lin Miaofa, sending her flying and smashing into the ground. However, the bright blood stained the ground, making Lin Miaofa look extremely miserable and pitiful. Thump, thump, thump. Yi Xian strolled to the front of Lin Miaofa and looked down at this woman. A vicious smile appeared on the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. Ruthless beating and wantonly humiliating. It seemed like Yi Xian was cruel and heartless, but in fact, only Yi Xian himself knew why he did it. How shrewd was Yi Xian's eyesight. From the short time he spent with Lin Miaofa, he could see that Lin Miaofa was a woman with great ambition, and a woman who boasted of being virtuous and virtuous. This kind of woman regarded all men in the world as playthings, and thought that she was superior. She wanted all men to kneel under her skirt and serve her orders. If Yi Xian didn't guess wrong, Lin Miaofa could rely on her looks and scheming to support the entire mystic kingdom with her saint monarch cultivation. There were only two ways to deal with this kind of woman. First, directly kill her. This was the most violent way, and also the most effective way. Second, destroy all her pride from the spiritual level, make her scared like a dog, and abandon all her pride and dignity. Obviously, Yi Xian used the second method, because he wanted the entire mystic kingdom to submit to him. As the master of the mystic kingdom, Lin Miaofa was naturally the target he wanted to subdue. As for Lin Miaofa wanting to negotiate with him, did she have the qualifications to do so? The strong were always strong, and the weak were like dogs. This was the cruelest thing, and she, Lin Miaofa, was not qualified at all. Either kneel and submit or die here. I'll give you 3 breaths of time to consider. Yi Xian spoke softly, and emotionlessly stared down at the woman beneath his feet. He didn't put her beauty in his eyes at all, and it was impossible for him to feel any pity for her. Yi Xian had experienced too many things along the way. Even though Lin Miaofa had unparalleled beauty, she was nothing in Yi Xian's eyes. If Yi Xian could not pass the test of beauty, then he would not have the cultivation he had today. The so-called beauty was nothing more than a skeleton, and the so-called power was like the moon in the water. What he, Yi Xian, wanted was to be invincible in the heavens. How could he not bear to do it because of a mere Lin Miaofa? Senior, I know I was wrong. Please spare my sister. Suddenly, Lin Miaoxian knelt before Yi Xian's feet. Her face was full of tears as she begged Yi Xian. She kept kowtowing to Yi Xian. Unfortunately, Yi Xian turned a blind eye to it. His eyes were still calmly staring at Lin Miaofa, obviously waiting for her choice. Cough cough. Lin Miaofa kept coughing up blood as her body trembled. Her beautiful face was stained with blood, and there was no trace of arrogance left. You. Lin Miaofa looked at Yi Xian with trembling eyes. She wanted to say something harsh, but when she saw Yi Xian's emotionless eyes, she swallowed her words. Bang! Lin Miaofa finally knelt at Yi Xian's feet. Silent tears flowed out of her eyes. These were tears of humiliation and fear of death. At this moment, the pride in Lin Miaofa's heart was completely gone. It was completely torn to pieces by Yi Xian. The face that she was most proud of looked so laughable at this moment. Lin Miaofa could only choose to submit. Although it seemed extremely humiliating, she could see from Yi Xian's eyes that he was not captivated by her appearance. If she did not kneel down and choose to submit, she believed that Yi Xian would definitely take her life in the next moment. Purity and arrogance no longer existed at this moment. Lin Miaofa had been shocked by Yi Xian's ruthless means. That's right. The weak should have the awareness of the weak. As long as you are obedient like dogs, why would I make things difficult for you? Looking at Lin Miaofa kneeling pitifully at his feet, Yi Xian showed a satisfied smile on his face. Then, he kindly helped Lin Miaofa and Lin Miaofa up, and took out a white handkerchief to gently wipe the blood from Lin Miaofa's face. However, Yi Xian's gentle action made Lin Miaofa tremble all over. Her scalp was extremely numb, and there was great fear in her eyes. But she did not dare to dodge. She was afraid of angering Yi Xian. She could only stand stiffly in place and let Yi Xian wipe the blood from her face. Tsk. You are indeed a stunning beauty. Even if you have some superficial wounds, you still look so pitiful. Yi Xian casually threw the handkerchief to the ground. He looked at Lin Miaofa with a face full of admiration and sincerely praised her. Yi Xian was a person who liked beautiful things. Although he would not be fascinated by Lin Miaofa's beauty, it did not affect his appreciation of Lin Miaofa's beauty. Well, what do you want? Lin Miaofa bit her lips and looked at Yi Xian with a pale face. She was really afraid of Yi Xian. Even her voice was trembling. From now on, you are my dog. If I tell you to go east, you will not go west. If I tell you to bite someone, you will bite that person. As long as you listen to my orders, not only will I not make things difficult for you and your sister, I will also give you endless benefits. Yi Xian said indifferently. Of course, as my dog, I will naturally protect you. Do you understand now? You don't go too far. Lin Miaofa's eyes were filled with tears. Finally, she could not control the humiliation in her heart and shouted at Yi Xian angrily. Yi Xian compared her to a dog. Lin Miaofa simply could not accept it. She was the saintess. How could she be someone's dog? If you don't want to be a dog, then I will send you to death. Yi Xian lightly smiled as he slowly raised his palm. A wisp of chaotic killing intent burst out, causing Lin Miaoxian's expression to change drastically. She hurriedly knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Yes, we are willing to be your dogs. Senior sister, don't anger him. Otherwise, he will kill you. Lin Miaoxian sent a message to Lin Miaofa with a trembling voice. Miaofa, greetings, master. Lin Miaofa's eyes were filled with tears. She bit her lips tightly, but under the threat of death, she still chose to submit to Yi Xian. Good, that's the way. Yi Xian nodded with satisfaction and looked at Lin Miaofa with a strange expression. To deal with such an ambitious woman, one must tear all her pride and trample on it. Only in this way could he really suppress her. Now I want you to help me find a few people. These are their portraits. If you find any traces of them, inform me immediately. Yi Xian took out a few jade slips, which recorded the appearance of Lu Bai and others. Yi Xian was most worried about the safety of Lu Bai, Fatty Huang, and the others. Even though he'd arrived at the Great Southern Dou region, he didn't know where Lu Bai and the others were. Thus, the most important thing right now was to find the whereabouts of Lu Bai and the others. Yi Xian's plan was very simple. He had now controlled Lin Miaofa, and he would completely integrate the Nanda territory into the chaotic world. Chapter 1104. In the central domain of the chaotic world, a man in snow-white robes stood proudly in the 9 heavens. Behind him was an illusory eternal heavenly palace, and an illusory figure was standing behind him. Lu Bai, have you made up your mind? The mysterious figure asked in a deep voice. You are not qualified to be my master. Lu Bai turned around abruptly. His white robe fluttered in the wind, and his black hair fluttered in the wind. His eyes were like the universe, giving people the feeling of an ocean of wisdom. After receiving this answer, the mysterious figure's breath stopped, and even its body stiffened. Who was he? He was the sect master of Wuxia, a divine king of the immortal realm. Throughout the chaotic world, countless people wanted to be his disciple. But today, he was rejected by a little saint, which made him feel very complicated. Lu Bai, don't be too arrogant. If I want to kill you, I can destroy your soul with just a thought. Sect Master Wuxia scolded coldly. Then just kill me. Why do you have to talk to me? Lu Bai said in a low voice. You? Sect Master Wuxia's breath froze. He looked at Lu Bai helplessly and let out a long sigh. Lu Bai, as long as you take me as your master, this king promises you that when the next Yuanhui begins, you will definitely become the new most powerful of all time. Moreover, you will rule the 11th Yuanhui for 129.83 million years. Heaven-mending sect master's voice carried a pleading tone as he lowered himself to the extreme. If this scene was seen by others, their jaws would drop in shock. The grand sect master of Wuxia, an immortal realm god king, was actually begging a little saint in such a humble manner. This was simply a fantasy. I have said that you are not qualified to be my master. I just want to find my friend. Lu Bai frowned slightly. Fine, fine, fine. Even if you don't want to be my disciple, you can still join my Butian sect. Don't you like to study formations? My Butian sect has a peerless formation and many formation books for you to study. Moreover, my Butian technique is known as the most powerful technique in the chaotic world. I can teach you everything. Sect Master Butian put down his old face and begged with all his might. He no longer had the dignity of an immortal realm expert. But I just want to find my friends as soon as possible. I don't want to join the Heaven Mending sect. I'm also very grateful to you for saving my life in the primal chaos starry sky. Bai will definitely not forget Sect Master's kindness in the future. Lu Bai still refused. Seeing how stubborn Lu Bai was, Sect Master Butian was about to explode from anger. However, he could only endure it. Who told Lu Bai to be the #1 genius of all time? Speaking of which, it was quite a coincidence. Sect Master Butian was roaming the primal chaos starry sky in search of some materials for setting up a formation. He happened to see Lu Bai being chased by the space insect race. Originally, Sect Master Butian didn't want to meddle in other people's business, but when Lu Bai unleashed the chaotic Four Tribulations formation, his mind was shaken, and he saved Lu Bai. Afterward, Sect Master Butian discovered that Lu Bai had the legendary primal chaos spirit body. This caused him to fall into a daze. Then, he brought Lu Bai back to the Heaven Mending sect, as if he had obtained a priceless treasure. Legend of Primal Chaos. There was a saying in the chaotic world that there were 12 war bodies. The Space-Time War Body, the Destiny War Body, the 10,000 Spirit War Body. These represented 12 supreme powers. In addition to these 12 supreme war bodies, there were many other powerful war bodies. These people who had war bodies were blessed by nature and were the favorites of the chaotic world. As long as they embarked on the path of cultivation, they could be said to be invincible in the same realm. There were even some geniuses who could go against people who were one realm higher than them. For example, the Lord of all Spirits was born with the 10,000 Spirit War Body, which was also one of the 12 supreme war bodies of the chaotic world. This also allowed him to become the 10th supreme war body of all time, ruling the 10th Yuan Hui for 1,298,300,000 years. Of course, there were too few people who had the 12 supreme war bodies. There might not even be 1 in 100 billion creatures. Below the 12 supreme war bodies, there were many terrifying divine bodies and sage bodies, which were not listed one by one. The Legend of Primal Chaos. In addition to the 12 supreme war bodies of the chaotic world, there was another body that surpassed the 12 supreme war bodies of the chaotic world. It was also known as the #1 war body of all time. This body was called the Primal Chaos Spirit Body. Unfortunately, the Primal Chaos Spirit Body was just a legend and had never appeared in the chaotic world. Even the Lord of Chaos, who once ruled the first Yuan Hui, only had the Primal Chaos War Body. The Primal Chaos War Body was known as the #1 war body of all time, but that was also under the circumstance that the Primal Chaos Spirit Body did not appear. Although there was only a difference of one word, the Primal Chaos War Body could not be compared with the Primal Chaos Spirit Body at all. Legend had it that the Primal Chaos Spirit Body did not encounter any calamities on the way of cultivation. It was born to be the favorite of chaos, and any cultivation method was as simple as drinking water and eating. To make the simplest analogy, if the Primal Chaos Spirit Body went through the chaos divine tribulation, there would be no calamities at all. The law of chaos would directly help to shape the body of a supreme sage. Even if there was the most powerful chaos divine tribulation of all time, the Primal Chaos Spirit Body could pass through it in its sleep without the slightest tribulation and directly be promoted to the most powerful of all time. Unfortunately, the chaotic universe had gone through the 10 Yuan Hui, and there was no Primal Chaos Spirit Body at all. This had always been a legend. However, when sect leader Butian discovered Lu Bai, he finally knew that the Primal Chaos Spirit Body really existed in the chaotic world, and he had actually encountered it. Therefore, sect leader Butian humbly begged Lu Bai. These days, sect leader Butian had used all kinds of methods he could think of to persuade Lu Bai. Sect leader Butian knew that in the future, Lu Bai would definitely become the 11th most powerful of all time. At that time, Butian sect would be able to rule the 11th Yuan Hui, and he would be able to become Lu Bai's master. This would be his greatest pride in this life. However, what gave sect leader Butian a headache was that Lu Bai had always wanted to leave. He did not want to stay in Butian's sect at all. Even if he begged again and again, it was useless. This was the primal chaos spirit body. As long as he was nurtured a little, when the 11th Yuan Hui began, he would definitely become the 11th most powerful of all time. How could sect leader Butian bear to let Lu Bai leave? Bang! Suddenly, sect leader Butian knelt down with a bang. This caused Lu Bai's expression to change greatly. He hurriedly tried to help sect leader Butian up. After all, sect leader Butian had saved his life. How could he accept his benefactor's kowtow? Little friend in white, please take pity on this old man. This old man is indeed not qualified to be your master, but you must join the Heaven Mending sect. My Heaven Mending sect's disciples are all at your disposal. If you want to find your friend, don't you need people? My Heaven Mending sect's influence is spread throughout the 5 regions of chaos. We can definitely help you find your friend. Sect leader Butian's face was covered in tears and snot. He almost kowtowed and begged Lu Bai. The so-called immortal realm's dignity was completely thrown away. What sect leader Butian? What immortal realm god king? In front of the primal chaos spirit body, these were all bullshit. As long as he could keep Lu Bai, sect leader Butian would agree to any condition. One could not blame sect leader Butian for being so shameless. One had to know that Lu Bai had the primal chaos spirit body. When the next Yuan Hui opened, he would definitely become the 11th strongest of all time. He could even lead the entire Butian sect to rule the 11th Yuan Hui. What was a mere kowtow? Lu Bai's expression was difficult. He really did not know what to do. Little friend Bai, don't you want to find your friends? If this old man did not guess wrong, this should be a girl you like, right? Little friend, don't worry. As long as you become the vice sect leader of Butian sect, this old man will definitely find this girl for you. I will let you two live together forever. Moreover, little friend, you have the primal chaos spirit body. Right now, you are only a small saint. If this news is known by others, it will definitely lead to a terrifying calamity. Why don't you peacefully cultivate in my Butian sect? When you enter the Saint King realm, you will be able to protect the girl you love. This is better than finding her yourself. Sect leader Butian's words were like lotus flowers. He looked at Lu Bai with a pitiful expression. He is a man. He is my close friend. Lu Bai covered his forehead and said helplessly. Sect leader Butian was clearly startled. He had always thought that Lu Bai was looking for a girl. Otherwise, why would he be so determined to leave? However, after hearing Lu Bai's explanation, sect leader Butian's expression immediately became somewhat strange. He looked at Lu Bai with a somewhat complicated expression. No one knew what he was thinking. However, sect leader is right. I should cultivate first. Only when I become strong can I truly protect Brother Yi. Lu Bai did not notice sect leader Butian's strange expression. After thinking for a while, he finally made his decision. Good. Hearing that Lu Bai was willing to stay in Butian sect leader Butian was overjoyed. The huge rock in his heart finally fell to the ground. However, he was extremely confused. Just who was this person that Lu Bai was so concerned about? Chapter 1105. The so-called battle physique was just a general term. It did not refer to one's own body, but something related to one's soul source. For example, Yi Xian had mastered the power of space and nirvana, but he did not have the space-time battle physique or the nirvana battle physique. The so-called battle physique was related to the soul source, which was a mysterious thing. It could also be called the aptitude for cultivation. For example, the Lord of all spirits was born with an affinity to the power of all spirits, which was why he was called the myriad spirit battle physique. The undying Heaven Lord had an affinity to the power of nirvana, which was why he was called the Nirvana battle physique. The body was just an outer shell. The real core was what was born from the soul source. Liu Bai's soul source was extremely mysterious. No matter what kind of cultivation technique was in his hands, he could easily cultivate it without any difficulties. That was why he was called the chaotic spirit physique. Southern Dipper region, Miaofa country. Yi Xian was half lying on a rocking chair. Lin Miaofa and Lin Miaoxian were massaging his shoulders and back. He narrowed his eyes and flipped through the ancient book in his hand, giving off a leisurely appearance. Mister, the Myriad Spirit Heavenly Palace has sent an invitation to you to participate in the Southern Dipper meeting. Would you like to go? Lin Miaoxian probed for Yi Xian. Southern Dipper meeting? Yi Xian whispered. You killed Yi Emoluo. Although the Myriad Spirit Heavenly Palace will not offend you because of this person, if they do not care about it, they will be laughed at by the outside world. Lin Miaofa's eyes flickered. You mean the Myriad Spirit Heavenly Palace wants to take me down a notch? Yi Xian smiled and instantly understood what Lin Miaofa meant. Obviously, he had casually killed Yi Emoluo. Although Yi Emoluo was just a pawn, he was still a member of the Myriad Spirit Heavenly Palace. The Myriad Spirit Heavenly Palace had to regain their dignity. You're right, sir. However, I'm afraid that's only one of the reasons. If I'm not wrong, the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace wants to invite you to join them. That's their true motive, Lin Miaofa said softly. However, there was a hint of nervousness in her eyes. Lin Miaofa couldn't be blamed for being nervous. Yi Xian's existence was known throughout the Southern Dipper region. He was a living great saint, and rumor had it that Yi Xian was a saint king from 100 million years ago. Although he was only a great saint now, how could such a character not be noticed by all the great sects? Regardless of whether Yi Xian's identity was real or fake, he was indeed a great sage. The 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace naturally wanted to recruit him. If I don't join the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace, will they attack me? Yi Xian sneered. That won't happen. However, you killed Yi Emoluo, so you must give the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace an explanation. After all, the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace is the ruler of the 10th Yuan Hui. If you don't give them face, I'm afraid this matter won't end well, Lin Miaofa said. The so-called great sects cared about their reputation the most. Moreover, the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace was an orthodoxy founded by the Lord of 10,000 Spirit. If someone killed someone from the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace, and the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace didn't do anything about it, wouldn't it become a joke to all the great sects? Sir, when the time comes, you just need to give the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace some face, and say that you didn't know Yi Emoluo was from the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace. They will definitely use this as an excuse to let this matter pass. After all, a mere Yi Emoluo can't be compared to you, Lin Miaoxian reminded. You mean to say that I should lower my head and apologize? Yi Xian glanced at Lin Miaoxian from the corner of his eyes. Sir, the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace cannot be offended. Not to mention you. Even a Saint King will have to give the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace some face, Lin Miaoxian said while biting her lips. Huh? So what if I don't give them face? Yi Xian sneered. The person who could make Yi Xian lower his head and apologize had not been born yet. Yi Xian had only killed a mere ant. Wanting him to lower his head to the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace was simply a joke. Did Yi Xian not care about his reputation? Sir, you must not act on impulse. Lin Miaofa's expression changed slightly as she hurriedly advised Yi Xian. If the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace's face is their face, then what about my, Yi Xian's face? Yi Xian's lips curled into a sneer. Then he waved at the two girls and said, Go tell the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace that I will attend the Southern Dipper meeting as promised. Looking at Yi Xian's cold expression, the two girls frowned, but they couldn't say anything else. They hurriedly left Yi Xian's side and replied to the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace's invitation. Humph. Even if you want to keep a low profile, you still have to see who I, Yi Xian, am facing. If I have to endure even some ants, then wouldn't my millions of years of arduous cultivation be a joke? Yi Xian sneered as killing intent flashed through his eyes. There was no need to keep a low profile, nor was there any concession. Since Yi Xian had come to the chaotic world, he had to act in a high-profile manner. Whoever dared to be his enemy, he would just kill them. If Yi Xian encountered an enemy who was more powerful than him, he would temporarily avoid them and wait for his cultivation to improve before he came back to kill the other party. After coming to the chaotic world, Yi Xian did not want to establish any forces, because he did not want to repeat the mistakes of the Celestial Court in the past. At that time, he had created the 33rd Celestial Court, but in fact, to a large extent, it had restricted him. He did not know how many enemies had used the Celestial Court as a bargaining chip to threaten him, which also made him feel that his hands and feet were tied. From a small mortal to the great sage of today, Yi Xian finally understood a principle. The so-called Taoist sects were only external objects. The only thing that was truly powerful was one's own body. Extra things would only become a burden to oneself. As long as he was strong enough, the so-called orthodoxy was nothing. He alone could equal a sect, and he alone was an orthodoxy. To put it bluntly, Yi Xian's way of survival in the chaotic world was that he had nothing to lose and was not afraid of wearing shoes. He was alone. Whoever dared to be his enemy, he would destroy his whole family. If he encountered an enemy that he could not defeat, Yi Xian would turn around and leave. He would return to kill all his disciples until his cultivation surpassed the strong enemy. Then, he would kill the strong enemy as well. Moreover, Yi Xian had already told a big lie. He claimed that he was the sage king from 100 million years ago. As an ancient sage king, he should have the temperament of a sage king. How could he bow to others and let others see him as a joke? In the battle for the great Tao, if one did not move forward, one would fall behind. Yi Xian was not a reckless man, but some things had to be done forcefully. Otherwise, others would only treat him as a soft persimmon. This so-called Nanda meeting was the time for Yi Xian to establish his power. He would also rise in the Nanda region and really compete with all the enemies. Of course, although Yi Xian did not establish any forces, he also wanted to make some friends, some mutually beneficial friends, which would also be of great benefit to his future. 3 years later, a golden ancient chariot rumbled out of the mystic spell kingdom. At this moment, the wind and clouds changed color. It crossed the sky and headed for the Moyen Mountain. Moyen Mountain. It was vast and boundless, standing up to the sky. The undulating mountain range was like a long dragon between heaven and earth. At a glance, one could not see the end. Chapter 1106. The most shocking thing was that the cloud-scraping mountain was floating in the sky like an immortal divine mountain. It stood between heaven and earth, giving people a sense of majesty and vastness. Rumble! The heaven and earth shook, and the light was dazzling. There were terrifying halos coming from all directions across the sky. Golden jade chariots, sacred beasts, auspicious clouds, and 9 dragons pulling the chariots. It was unknown how many chariots were carrying some important figures toward the cloud-scraping mountain. At the peak of the cloud-scraping mountain, a vast Taoist field appeared. Auspicious clouds floated in the sky, and a grand auspicious cloud banquet appeared. There were fairies singing and dancing, yellow-scarved strongmen beating drums, and little saints welcoming guests. The sky was filled with golden light, illuminating the so-called Southern Dipper small meeting. Ha ha ha. We haven't seen each other for many years. Brother Immortal's cultivation base is getting more and more profound. I'm impressed. Suddenly, a wild laughter came from the distant sky. A man in a green Taoist robe appeared and strode toward an old man in red. Brother Qing Ming, you must be joking. Please take a seat. Supreme Saint Immortal smiled and strode toward Supreme Saint Qing Ming. His face was full of enthusiasm. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, a burst of bell-like laughter rang out. A colorful cloud drifted down, and a woman in a crimson palace dress appeared. We haven't seen each other for many years. Greetings. The 9-tailed celestial fox bowed to the 2 men. The charming smile on her face was so seductive. Fellow 9-tailed, please take a seat. Supreme Saint Immortal's expression changed. But he still smiled and invited the nine-tailed celestial fox into the auspicious cloud banquet. Rumble. The sky shook, and the light was dazzling. A few more figures appeared and entered the auspicious cloud banquet. Supreme Saint Imohua also went to welcome them. Tianyi Dao, Xianqingzi, Nether Sect, Old Devil Yu Ming, Bai Xie Dao, Immortal Jiugong. The arrival of three great saints immediately made the place lively. Under Supreme Saint Imohua's welcome, everyone took their seats. Whoosh! In addition to these great saints, there were hundreds of people from various orthodoxies. The Southern Dipper small meeting was overcrowded. At the auspicious cloud banquet, Big Brother Imohua, I heard that this person called Yi Xian was a saint king from 100 million years ago. Is this true? Great Sage Qing Ming asked playfully. Sage ruler? Without waiting for the desert fire saint to respond, Tianyi Xianqingzi laughed coldly. None of you are children. Even saint kings cannot come out of seclusion. Every one of them is a world-shaking existence. Even if he is a saint king from 100 million years ago, there are traces of him. However, I have never heard of such a person. Ha ha ha. The nine-tailed celestial fox rolled her eyes and smiled. You can't say that. 100 million years ago, the Lord of all spirits achieved Tao. That battle caused the entire starry sky to collapse. Who knows how many saint kings fell? Maybe he really is a saint king? Little sister Ninetail is right. We've only lived for a few tens of millions of years. Too many peerless figures appeared 100 million years ago. How would us juniors know them? Yu Ming chuckled coldly. According to what you said, when this Yi Xian comes, do we have to call him senior? Spiritual Master Jiugong laughed coldly. It's fine if you want to call him senior. After all, you are famous for being a hypocrite among the great sages. Old Demon Yu Ming sneered. Bang! Spiritual Master Jiugong's face turned red. He slammed the table and stood up. The might of a great sage burst forth. He glared at Old Demon Yu Ming and said, Brother Yu Ming, what do you mean? What do I mean? Old Demon Yu Ming fiddled with his slender fingernails and laughed coldly. You killed my disciple back then. I haven't settled the score with you yet. What do you think I mean? Old Demon Yu Ming, do you want to fight me? Spiritual Master Jiugong's face turned gloomy. The aura of a great sage flowed around him. Alright, I also want to see how capable you old thief Jiugong are. Rumble. Old Demon Yu Ming slammed the table and stood up. Terrifying chaotic demonic light rumbled, as if he was ready to fight at any moment. Fellow Taoists, today is the Southern Dipper meeting, held by my 10,000 spirit heavenly palace. If the two of you have any grievances, you can settle them after the Southern Dipper meeting, Supreme Saint Desert Fire warned with a cold expression. Spiritual Master Jiugong's face changed slightly. He snorted and sat back down. Old Demon Yu Ming sneered, and the terrifying demonic light around him dissipated. Clearly, they did not dare to offend the 10,000 spirit palace. After all, the entire Great Southern Dipper region was ruled by the 10,000 spirit palace. If they did not respect the 10,000 spirit palace, their orthodoxies would not be able to establish themselves in the Great Southern Dipper region. Rumble. Heaven and earth rumbled as rays of light rolled. A golden ancient war chariot rumbled toward cloud-piercing mountain. Three figures walked out of the war chariot and strode toward the auspicious cloud banquet. Yi Xian walked in front while the two ladies followed behind. When the three of them entered the auspicious cloud banquet, Supreme Saint Imohua's eyes lit up. He quickly stood up and strode toward Yi Xian. Ha ha ha. Supreme Saint Imohua laughed out loud. I've long heard of Brother Yi Xian's reputation. Today, I see that you live up to your reputation. Greetings, brother. Supreme Saint Imohua was very humble. After all, the purpose of the Southern Dipper meeting was to recruit Yi Xian into the 10,000 Spirit Palace. Naturally, he had to show enough sincerity to Yi Xian. Brother. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Although I've been sleeping for 100 million years and have fallen from the Saint King realm, I'm still your senior. How dare you call me brother? As Yi Xian's words fell, Supreme Saint Imohua's smile suddenly stiffened. He looked at Yi Xian with a touch of hostility in his eyes, but he quickly recovered. Brother, You should understand that the strong are respected in the 5 regions of chaos. Naturally, we have to call each other brother when we're in the same realm. If you recover your Saint King realm cultivation, I'll have to change the way I address you, Supreme Saint Immortal said. Well, what you said makes sense. Yi Xian's eyes moved. Brother, please take a seat, Supreme Saint Immortal said as he welcomed Yi Xian and the 2 ladies into the auspicious cloud banquet. When Yi Xian brought the 2 ladies into the auspicious cloud banquet, Yi Xian could naturally feel the presence of these great sages. This made him glance at them slightly and then sit down quietly. Yi Xian had not been in the chaotic world for long, and this was the first time he saw people in the same realm as him. Moreover, there were several great sages. However, what made Yi Xian feel slightly strange was that he actually felt that these great sages were extremely weak. Whether it was their physical body or cultivation, they were completely incomparable to him. Could this be related to the mutated chaotic divine tribulation? Yi Xian's mind slightly stirred. He remembered that his origin spirit had once told him that he had passed through a mutated primal chaos holy tribulation and could be said to be invincible in the great sage realm. He was definitely not someone an ordinary great sage could compare to. Now it seemed that all this was true. Chapter 1107. I can't see through this person? Suddenly, the 9-tailed celestial fox muttered in surprise. Ever since Yi Xian entered, she had been observing Yi Xian. However, she was shocked to find that she could not see through Yi Xian's cultivation base. Could this person really be a Saint King from 100 million years ago? Old Demon Yu Ming's expression changed slightly. So what if he was a Saint King? He's just like us now. What's there to be surprised about? Great Sage Qing Ming sneered coldly as he looked at Yi Xian with a slightly unfriendly gaze. It was no wonder that Great Sage Qing Ming was hostile towards Yi Xian. After all, he had always wanted to dominate Lin Miaofa. Now that he saw Lin Miaofa and Lin Miaofa following beside Yi Xian, he naturally felt uncomfortable in his heart. Yi Daoyu, let me give you a toast. Great Sage Immortal raised his wine cup and drank it in one gulp. He did not mention that Yi Xian had killed Yi Maoyuo. As the saying goes, one does not slap a smiling face. Yi Xian nodded slightly and drank the wine in his cup. Fellow Taoist Yi, let me introduce you to the other fellow Taoists here. Looking at Yi Xian's calm face, Great Sage Immortal's eyes turned, and he stood up to introduce a few people to Yi Xian. This is Great Sage Qing Ming from the Holy Land of Taichu. He knows the true Taichu mantra. No need, I'm not interested in knowing them. Since you invited me here today, just say what you want to say. Yi Xian waved his hand and interrupted. How dare you? Great Sage Qing Ming rebuked angrily. He could not stand Yi Xian's arrogance. Now that he dared to ignore him, he was completely enraged. Not only was Qing Ming unfriendly, but the others frowned as well. They were also unhappy with Yi Xian's unreasonable behavior. Even if you're a Saint King from 100 million years ago, you're only a great saint now. How dare you disregard everyone here? The most awkward one was the Desert Fire Supreme Sage. However, he was also very experienced. He first gave the Green Nether Supreme Sage a subtle look, clearly telling him to suppress his anger and act according to his mood later. Yi Daoyu is indeed a straightforward person. Actually, the reason I invited you to the Southern Dipper meeting is because I hope you can join our 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace, Great Sage Desert Fire said with a smile. I'm not interested in the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave, Yi Xian said calmly as he beckoned to Lin Miaofa and Lin Qianqian to leave. This scene left the Desert Fire Great Sage stunned. He thought that Yi Xian would agree, and even if he didn't, he would find a reason to tactfully refuse. However, Yi Xian had bluntly refused, not taking him seriously at all. This directly caused the Desert Fire Great Sage's face to redden as flames of fury rose in his chest. Yi Daoyu, let me remind you that this is not 100 million years ago. Our 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace is in charge of the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace now. If you leave this place, you'll find it difficult to do anything in the future, Great Sage Desert Fire said coldly. Are you threatening me? Yi Xian stopped in his tracks and turned around to look at the great sage of desert fire. A strange smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. You've misunderstood. Our 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace may be in charge of the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace, but we won't bully or threaten you. However, you've killed a member of our 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace. Aren't you going to give us an explanation? Great Sage Desert Fire poured himself a cup of wine and drank it in one gulp. There was no longer any smile on his face. Instead, he looked coldly at Yi Xian. If I were you, I wouldn't say so much nonsense. If you want me to give you an explanation, then we'll have to see if you have the ability to do so, Yi Xian said indifferently. Just how shrewd was Yi Xian? How could he not see that Great Sage Desert Fire had gathered all the great sages here to show him the power of the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace? He wanted to show him the power of the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace, so that he would be forced to join them. Unfortunately, Great Sage Desert Fire had miscalculated one thing. Yi Xian had come here to pick a fight. If he wanted to rise in the southern Dou region, he had to establish his power. Yi Xian was a person who would either not do anything, or he would do something shocking. Yi Xian disdained to bully some small orthodoxies. Since the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace was extremely powerful, it was the perfect target for him to establish his power. Perhaps some people would ask if Yi Xian had gone crazy. Why did he have to provoke a colossus like the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace? Wasn't this an act of suicide? Actually, the reason was very simple. Firstly, Yi Xian would not lower his head to the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace. Secondly, the Lord of all Spirits was in charge of the 10th Yuan Hui. He was the 10th strongest of all eternity. Yi Xian's goal was to become the strongest of all eternity. He could not wait until the 11th Yuan Hui began. According to Yi Xian's guess, if he could kill the Lord of all Spirits, wouldn't he be able to occupy the position of the strongest of all eternity in the 10th Yuan Hui? Although this idea was extremely crazy, Yi Xian firmly believed that it was possible. Therefore, he would have to face the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace sooner or later. The most important problem was that he was now a great saint. He was still extremely far away from becoming the strongest of all eternity. Moreover, the path of cultivation required tempering and opportunity. The 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace was precisely a whetstone that could constantly urge him to improve. Without pressure, there would be no motivation. Only through the tempering of life and death could his cultivation rapidly improve. Yi Xian was very clear about one thing. He was only an ordinary person. All along his path, he had relied on his hard work in cultivation. He had wandered between life and death, and continuously broke through his own cultivation. He did not have Lu Bai's unparalleled talent, nor did he have Lu Bai's exceptional talent. Lu Bai's cultivation path was smooth, and he could climb all the way to the peak. However, Yi Xian did not have this talent. Buddhists often said that all life was equal. However, in Yi Xian's understanding, people could not be compared to each other. Some people were born with great wealth, while others were born with great poverty. Even the starting line was different. How could there be equality? However, Yi Xian believed in one thing. Although he did not have Lu Bai's exceptional talent and aptitude, he could rely on his hard work to climb to the peak step by step. He had also walked all the way to the peak. To put it bluntly, although Lu Bai was Yi Xian's close friend, Yi Xian did not want to be inferior to Lu Bai. He did not want Yi Xian to still be a great saint when the two of them met again. On the other hand, Lu Bai had already stepped into the Saint King realm. Perhaps he could even surpass the Saint realm. Everyone had a competitive heart, and Yi Xian was no exception. Therefore, he wanted to give himself endless pressure, so that when the two of them met again, he would not be inferior to Lu Bai in the slightest. Therefore, Yi Xian wanted to use the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace as a whetstone to sharpen his cultivation. Although there was a crisis of life and death, Yi Xian did not care. After all, he had always been like this. Yi Daoyu, this saint can give you another chance. As long as you bow down and apologize to my 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace, the matter of you killing Yi Maluo can be written off, Supreme Saint Emohua said coldly. Supreme Saint Emohua did not want to go too far. He was also giving Yi Xian a chance. Miofa. If you don't want the Miofa kingdom to vanish, come to this saint now. Suddenly, Supreme Saint Qing Ming drank the wine in his cup, and looked indifferently at Lin Miofa and Lu Bai. The might of a great saint faintly burst forth, and the surrounding void was distorted to the extreme. His words were full of coercion. Chapter 1108. The atmosphere was tense, and the situation was grim. Lin Miofa and Lin Miaofa's expressions were heavy. They didn't know how to choose. As the saying goes, a fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. If you two continue to follow him, I'm afraid you'll die without a burial ground. Great Sage Qing Ming swirled his wine cup with a sinister look. At this moment, Yi Xian's expression was calm, and he didn't show any fluctuations. He just looked at the two women indifferently, waiting for them to make their choice. Great Sage Qing Ming, we won't betray Senior Yi. Lin Miofa flatly refused, but there was a touch of helplessness in her eyes. She then lowered her eyes and didn't say anything. In fact, it wasn't that the two women were loyal to Yi Xian, but that Yi Xian had planted a restriction on them. If they really dared to betray Yi Xian could destroy their souls with a thought. If they had a choice, the two sisters would have left Yi Xian long ago. Why would they follow him? Stubborn. Great Sage Qing Ming's face was filled with rage. He looked at Yi Xian with a gloomy killing intent in his eyes. Yi Daoyu, I don't want to talk nonsense. My 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace is suppressing the 10th Yuan Hui. If you don't give my 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace an explanation today, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave this place. Great Sage Emohua said coldly. Buzz. Suddenly, Yi Xian took a step forward and strangely appeared in front of Great Sage Emohua. He was looking down at him with a condescending attitude. I have to say that you're very bold. No one has dared to talk to me like this for many years. Yi Xian said calmly. Dang. 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 Great Sage Emohua's expression changed drastically, because he didn't see how Yi Xian appeared in front of him. This also made him retreat in shock. He looked at Yi Xian with a heavy expression. Very strong, so strong that it made him feel suffocated. This was what Great Sage Emohua felt the most. In the primordial spirit void, the world was extremely fast. Ever since Yi Xian stepped into the Great Sage realm, the great divine ability of the primordial spirit void had already allowed him to cultivate it to the peak. Not to mention the great sages present, even Saint Kings might not be able to capture his trajectory. Actually, in my opinion, you're all just trash. I'm only here because I'm giving face to the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace. Unfortunately, you don't appreciate the face I've shown you, and insist on seeking your own deaths. You can't blame me for what happens next. Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back, and looked around at the crowd. His voice was very calm, as if he was talking about something very casual. You, bang! The green nether great sage slammed the table and stood up. His great sage aura erupted as he strode towards Yi Xian. Let me see how capable you are. You actually dared to speak such arrogant words in front of us. Thump, thump, thump. The green nether grand sage strode forward. With every step he took, the heavens and earth trembled. The exploding clouds rolled across the heavens and earth, as an extremely frightening aura burst forth. Rumble! The green nether grand sage's chaotic great sage aura spread out. A green light sword shot up into the sky, and the chaotic aura of slaughter stirred up the endless clouds. The primordial sword technique. He actually cultivated the primordial sword technique? Old Demon Yu Ming muttered in shock. I've always heard that the green nether cultivates the primordial sword technique. I didn't expect this guy to actually succeed. The nine-tailed celestial fox's expression changed slightly. The primordial sword technique kills everything. This guy is in big trouble. Taoist Jiugong smiled coldly. Clang, 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 clang. The green nether grand sage stood proudly. The primordial sword light circled around him, making him look even more majestic. Among the myriad of chaos, only I, the primordial sword technique, can destroy everything. The green nether grand sage said majestically. His entire person was extremely solemn. I've cultivated the primordial sword technique for 18 million years. Today, I'll test my sword on you. I'll let you know that there's always someone better than you. The Green Nether Grand Sage scolded coldly. The primordial sword technique. The Green Nether Grand Sage roared into the sky. Billions of miles of clouds were shattered. His sword finger pointed at Yi Xian. The primordial sword light hummed, carrying with it a horrifying power that could destroy everything, and headed for Yi Xian. The primordial sword light can destroy everything. Dodge or you'll. The nine-tailed celestial fox suddenly shouted. Suddenly, the nine-tailed heavenly fox let out a delicate shout, reminding Yi Xian of how terrifying the absolute beginning sword technique was. However, before she could finish speaking, the following scene completely stunned the nine-tailed heavenly fox. No, it wasn't just the nine-tailed celestial fox. Everyone felt as if they were in a dream. They were completely stunned. Clang! The sound of metal clashing could be heard. A little spark bloomed in the void. A jade-like finger reached out and gently pressed against the primordial sword light. No matter how much the primordial sword light hummed, it couldn't move forward. This is the so-called primordial sword technique? It's so weak and pitiful. Yi Xian pointed a finger at the tip of the primordial sword light. He frowned slightly as he muttered to himself. This so-called primordial sword technique couldn't hurt him at all. How is this possible? The Green Nether Grand Sage roared in shock. He couldn't believe his eyes. The primordial sword technique, which he had cultivated for 18 million years, was broken so easily? It wasn't just the Green Nether Grand Sage who couldn't believe it. The other supreme saints present all gasped. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed what they were seeing. It was worth noting that the most powerful magic of the Holy Land of Taichu was the primordial sword technique. Anyone who had cultivated the primordial sword technique would be called a sword saint. They had extremely terrifying offensive power in the supreme saint plane. Boom! Suddenly, Yi Xian flicked his finger. The primordial sword light crumbled. The terrifying residual power of the saint blew away billions of miles of clouds. The so-called auspicious cloud banquet turned into a vacuum. I don't believe it. The Green Nether Grand Sage's eyes were red. He couldn't accept this fact at all. His cultivation of a supreme saint was raised to the extreme. Dozens of primordial sword lights spread out. He looked at Yi Xian with extremely terrifying murderous intent in his eyes. Primordial sword technique kill. The Green Nether Grand Sage's sword finger was like a wheel that covered the sky. Dozens of primordial sword lights all shot toward Yi Xian. This was obviously his strongest attack. Clang! Clang! Something terrifying happened. Yi Xian didn't dodge. He let the primordial sword lights shoot on his body. They couldn't even break through his skin. Only the terrifying sound of impact exploded between heaven and earth. How is this possible? How is this possible? The Green Nether Grand Sage used his most powerful technique, but it didn't pose any threat to Yi Xian. He was dumbfounded. He felt like he was in a nightmare that he couldn't wake up from. I don't believe it. Suddenly, the Green Nether Grand Sage's eyes were as red as blood. He wanted to use the primordial sword technique again. But before he could do anything, Yi Xian stepped out and quietly appeared before him. You really are a piece of trash. You are so weak that I can't even look at you. Yi Xian said in disgust. Die. The Green Nether Grand Sage's face was red. He slammed his palm toward Yi Xian's head. A firefly dares to compete with the moon? The heaven and earth exploded and everything collapsed. Yi Xian slammed his palm. The terrifying chaotic saint aura pressed down on the Green Nether Grand Sage's body. He couldn't dodge at all. Chapter 1109. Bang! Wah! Yi Xian's attack was too terrifying. It directly struck the top of the Green Nether Great Sage's head, causing him to bleed from his 7 orifices. His entire body was sent flying thousands of miles away, and the blood in his mouth sprayed out into the air. However, it was not over yet. Yi Xian took a step forward and instantly appeared before the Green Nether Grand Sage. His 5 fingers were like a curtain that covered the sky. He suddenly grabbed the Green Nether Grand Sage's hair and teleported him back to the Southern Dipper meeting. Bang! Yi Xian threw the Green Nether Grand Sage to the ground, as if he was throwing away trash. He stepped on his head, and the wide soles of his feet crushed half of the green nether grand sage's head into the ground. Silence, silence, dead silence. When this terrifying scene appeared before everyone's eyes, the heavens and earth were terrifyingly silent. The sound of people gasping could be heard continuously. How is this possible? The Desert Fire Grand Sage said in a trembling voice. We are both great saints. How can he be so powerful? The nine-tailed celestial fox murmured in horror. She looked at Yi Xian with great fear in her eyes. Combat constitution. He must have some kind of combat constitution. Otherwise, his physical body can't be so strong. The Netherworld Old Demon said in a trembling voice. They naturally knew how powerful the Green Nether Grand Sage was. However, when faced with Yi Xian, he did not even have the strength to fight back, and was suppressed in an instant. This made them extremely frightened. In fact, they did not know that although they were both great saints, the Green Nether Grand Sage and Yi Xian were not at the same level. The Green Nether Grand Sage was just an ordinary great saint, but Yi Xian was different. He had passed the chaotic divine tribulation, and he cultivated the immortal scripture, which was the most powerful technique created by the immortal God Lord. Moreover, don't forget that Yi Xian controlled the space-time power and the nirvanic power. With these factors added together, Yi Xian was an invincible existence in the Great Sage realm. How could a mere Qingming Great Sage be his opponent? Of course, Yi Xian did not use the power of time and space, and the power of nirvanic extermination at all, because these two supreme powers were related to the Undying Heaven Palace and the Temporal Temple. If he really used them, it would definitely attract the attention of the two colossi. Moreover, Yi Xian's own cultivation base was enough to suppress a mere Green Nether Great Sage. There was no need for him to use these two supreme powers. Abruptly, an ear-piercing shriek rang out from beneath Yi Xian's feet. The Green Nether Great Sage was howling in anger and humiliation. Clearly, being trampled beneath Yi Xian's feet was a great humiliation to him. Rumble. The Green Nether Great Sage channeled his cultivation base and tried to stand up, but Yi Xian's physical body and cultivation base were too terrifying. The soles of his feet were like the immemorial stars pressing down on his body. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stand up. Let me go. The Green Nether Great Sage was humiliated to the extreme and roared at Yi Xian. He was a dignified great sage, but now he was being trampled under someone's feet. If this matter spread out, he would become the laughing stock of the great Nanda territory. Maybe you don't know, but anyone who offends me is a dead man, Yi Xian said lightly. You dare to kill me. I am from the holy land of Taichu. If you dare to kill me, the holy land of Taichu will not let you go. The Green Nether Great Sage roared angrily. He didn't believe that Yi Xian would dare to kill him. Yi Daoyu, where it is possible to forgive, forgive. Why don't you give me face and let him go? The Desert Fire Great Sage frowned slightly. After seeing Yi Xian's terrifying cultivation base, he didn't want to make things difficult for Yi Xian. After all, great sages of this level were rare in the entire Great Nanda territory. Who do you think you are to ask me to give you face? Yi Xian sneered. You? The Desert Fire Great Sage's expression changed. He never thought that Yi Xian would be so arrogant that he didn't take him seriously. Was he not afraid of offending the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace? Yi Daoyu, the Holy Land of Taichu has a Saint King Great Ancestor. Don't make a mistake. As long as you let me go today, the grudge between you and me will be written off. The Green Nether Great Sage finally calmed down. He warned Yi Xian coldly, because he already felt Yi Xian's murderous intent locked on him. Oh, a Saint King? Yi Xian's eyes lit up slightly. He moved his foot away from the Green Nether Great Sage's head. This also made the Green Nether Great Sage stand up instantly. A touch of pride flashed across his eyes. Yi Xian, today's shame will be engraved in my heart. The Holy Land of Taichu will remember your name. The Green Nether Great Sage said coldly. With a flick of his sleeve, he was about to leave. It was obvious that he was defeated by Yi Xian, and was even trampled under his feet. This was a great humiliation to him. If he hadn't brought up the Saint King Great Ancestor behind him, he would have died at the hands of Yi Xian today. Did I allow you to leave? Suddenly, Without waiting for the green nether great sage to leave, Yi Xian's cold voice sounded. The green nether great sage's expression changed. He looked back at Yi Xian gloomily and said, I've already lost. What else do you want? Yi Xian shook his head in disappointment. He looked at the green nether great sage, as if he was looking at an idiot. Didn't I just say that anyone who offends me is a dead man? Yi Xian said ruthlessly. The green nether great sage was stunned. He didn't understand the meaning of Yi Xian's words. But in the next moment, his eyes widened in horror and a scream came from his mouth. What do you want to do? What do I want to do? Of course I want to kill you. Because those who threaten me are all dead. Rumble. Yi Xian whispered in a low voice. The chaotic saint aura burst out. When he slammed out his palm, the mountains and rivers instantly froze. The terrifying aura pressed down on the green nether great sage's body, making him unable to move at all. Yi Xian was invincible in the same realm. This was the unparalleled power of Yi Xian. Throughout the history of supreme saints, no one could be his opponent. Bang! This palm was like an ancient star. This palm was like a millstone that could destroy the world. It directly blew up the green nether great sage in the sky. Even at the moment of his death, the green nether great sage didn't know what kind of terrifying character he had offended. His soul scattered and blood rained down. When the green nether great sage fell between heaven and earth, the desert fire great sage and the others looked at each other in a daze. They didn't recover for a long time. You're really weak and pitiful. Rumble. The Calamity Transcender technique was activated. Yi Xian turned into a mass of black fog and swallowed the blood energy of the green nether great sage. When the black fog dissipated, Yi Xian appeared again and burped in satisfaction. Chi. A cosmos bag fell and was directly taken by Yi Xian. Yi Xian's face revealed a satisfied smile. Obviously, Yi Xian wasn't satisfied after using the Calamity Transcender technique to swallow the blood energy of the green nether great sage. This cosmos bag belonged to the green nether great sage, so there should be a lot of good things inside. Yi Xian naturally wouldn't let it go. Chapter 11:10. The so-called killing a great sage wasn't because Yi Xian was too strong, but because the green nether great sage was too weak. He was so weak that Yi Xian didn't even put him in his eyes. Great sages were indeed terrifying, and they were also overlords. However, the great sage realm was divided into different levels, and the green nether great sage was undoubtedly the weakest. When this bloody and strange scene appeared, the faces of great sage Desert Fire and the others turned pale, and they quietly retreated. They looked at Yi Xian as if they were looking at a madman. Yi Daoyu, you've gone too far. What kind of evil technique did you use? Great sage Desert Fire angrily rebuked, but if one listened carefully, they would find that his eyes were slightly trembling, and even his voice was trembling. This proved how frightened he was of Yi Xian. This was because when Yi Xian used the Tribulation Transcender technique, his soul was trembling to the extreme. Hee. A smile appeared on the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. He looked at Great Sage Desert Fire indifferently and said, Didn't you want me to give your 10,000 spirit heavenly palace an explanation? What do you think of this explanation? You? Great Sage Desert Fire clenched his fists and then slowly relaxed them. The fear in his eyes gradually calmed down. Great Sage Desert Fire coldly said, Yi Daoyu, do you know that your actions today not only incur the hatred of the Holy Land of Taichu, but also offend my 10,000 spirit heavenly palace? In the struggle for the great Tao, if one doesn't advance, one will retreat. If one is afraid of the slightest thing, how can one achieve supreme cultivation? Yi Xian coldly laughed. Since he dared to kill the Green Sea Great Sage, he didn't care about these things. I hope you won't regret it in the future. Great Sage Desert Fire flung his sleeves and said coldly. Great Sage Desert Fire was very self-aware. At most, he was only a little stronger than the Green Nether Great Sage. He wasn't a match for Yi Xian at all, so there was no need to fight with Yi Xian. Moreover, the technique Yi Xian just used was too strange. If he wasn't mistaken, it was a great technique that could devour other people's cultivation. At this moment he absolutely couldn't fight with Yi Xian, so he directly ordered Yi Xian to leave. However, the Desert Fire Great Sage understood very well that the Holy Land of Taichu wouldn't let Yi Xian off after he killed the Green Nether Great Sage. He was afraid that the old Sage King who was silent in the Holy Land of Taichu would come out, and Yi Xian wouldn't live for long. At that time, he would naturally deal with him. It's easy to invite the gods, but it's hard to send them off. Haven't you heard of this before? Yi Xian smiled sinisterly. What do you want? Great Sage Desert Fire's expression changed. It wasn't until now that he realized that Yi Xian wasn't a pushover. He was afraid that he didn't come with good intentions. Actually, I'm a very reasonable person. As long as you hand over your Qingquan bag, I'll turn around and leave without saying a word. But if you don't do as I say, then I can only let you die here. Yi Xian smiled cruelly. A threat, a naked threat. Yi Xian's purpose here was very simple. First, to establish his power. Second, to plunder and devour. Yes, to plunder and devour. There were endless spiritual treasures in the chaotic world. And Yi Xian had just come to the chaotic world, so he didn't have any cultivation resources. If Yi Xian were to search for them bit by bit, it wouldn't be his character. For Yi Xian, the fastest way was to plunder and devour these great sages. These great sages had lived for tens of millions of years, so they must have accumulated a lot of things. This naturally made Yi Xian extremely tempted. In addition to hard work, cultivation naturally required the help of external things. Elixirs, spirit stones, heaven and earth treasures. These external things were indispensable. They could greatly shorten Yi Xian's cultivation time. Yi Xian didn't lack cultivation techniques. He had the Immortal scripture and the boundless mortal world technique in his hands. His weapons were the heaven-punishing halberd and the Nirvana battle armor. The only thing he lacked now was cultivation resources. Since stepping into the Great Sage realm, Yi Xian's cultivation had stagnated. According to Yi Xian's calculations, if he wanted to cultivate to the Sage King realm, it would take him 50 million years alone. This was unacceptable to him. Although the Calamity Transcendence technique was powerful and could devour other people's cultivation, everyone's cultivation was impure. Even if he devoured a great sage, it wouldn't increase his own cultivation much, unless he could devour a Sage King realm character. However, Yi Xian didn't know how powerful a Sage King realm character was. This matter needed to be planned slowly. Therefore, the Qingquan bags in the hands of these great sages became Yi Xian's target. You're delusional. The great sage of Desert Fire was finally enraged as he loudly reprimanded Yi Xian. You are indeed very strong. But do you really think we are easy to bully? Spiritual Master Jiugong's face was cold as he slowly got up. The power of a great sage faintly overflowed. Yi Daoyu, I don't have any grudges against you. And I don't want to be your enemy. However, if you want my Qingquan bag, then I will not be polite. Old Demon Yuming said coldly. Ha ha ha. Nine-tailed Fox smiled coquettishly and walked towards Yi Xian. She said, Yi Daoyu is really arrogant. Don't you know that you will offend us by doing this? Or is Yi Daoyu confident that he can take on 4 of us by himself? If I were you, I would obediently hand over the Qingquan bag. Otherwise, if you are injured or die, then don't blame me. Yi Xian smiled slightly. Oh. Nine-tailed Fox's delicate face moved and she chuckled. Fellow Taoists, it seems that this Yi Daoyu is very confident. Then, what are we waiting for? Kill. Great Sage Imohua's chest had been filled with raging anger for a long time. Extremely terrifying power of a great sage bloomed, and he directly shot out a Tongtian great technique towards Yi Xian. The others followed closely behind. Extremely terrifying great sage power erupted and blasted towards Yi Xian. The 4 great sages attacked without any hesitation. Obviously, it was impossible for them to hand over their Qingquan bags. Those who could become great sages naturally had the pride of a great sage. How could they be afraid just because Yi Xian killed great sage Qingming? Moreover, with the 4 of them joining forces, they did not believe that Yi Xian could really take on 4 of them. Rumble. The world turned upside down, and the sun and moon lost their light. A great battle broke out with a loud bang. The clouds within hundreds of millions of miles turned into dust. The terrifying power of a great sage erupted, causing the world to shake to the extreme. It did not take long. Only half an hour passed. When the clouds and mist dissipated, a miserable scene also appeared. The 4 great sages' faces were bruised and swollen. Even their clothes were tattered. They were lying on the ground like dead dogs. Blood was constantly flowing from the corners of their mouths. Their bodies were constantly twitching in the clouds, and painful groans could be heard from time to time. Not bad, the harvest is not bad. Yi Xian held the 4 Qianquan bags in his hand with a satisfied smile on his face. He casually put away the 4 Qianquan bags, then narrowed his eyes, and looked at the 4 people lying on the ground. Wouldn't it have been better if you had handed them over earlier? Look at your pitiful appearance. Yi Xian sighed. Wah! Great Sage Desert Fire spat out a mouthful of old blood. He looked at Yi Xian with a face full of anger and said, My 10,000 spirit heavenly palace will not let you go. Bang! Yi Xian slapped out, directly smashing Great Sage Desert Fire's body into pieces and killing him. The Tribulation Transcender technique burst out with a loud bang, turning into a black mist that filled the sky and swallowing his cultivation base and blood energy. Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of turbid air and whispered with slight disgust, You talk so much nonsense. Just die. Chapter 11:11. They were scared out of their wits. The remaining great sages were scared out of their wits by Yi Xian. Great Sage Imohua, who was still alive and kicking, was killed in an instant. They felt like they were dreaming. It was fine that Yi Xian killed Great Sage Qing Ming, but Great Sage Imohua was from the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace. Yi Xian killed him just like that. Wasn't he afraid of the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace's revenge? Suddenly, the 9-tailed heavenly fox and the others shivered because Yi Xian's sinister gaze fell onto them. An extremely terrifying killing intent firmly locked onto them. No matter how small a mosquito is, it's still meat. Yi Xian muttered sinisterly as he sized them up. It was obvious that he had the intention of killing them and devouring their cultivation. 9-tailed Fox's heart was clear. When she felt Yi Xian's killing intent, she hurriedly pleaded, Fellow Taoist, we have no enmity between us. Please let me live. My heavenly demon temple will definitely repay you generously in the future. Yi Daoyu, the more friends you have, the more options you have. Even if you kill us, it won't do you much good, old demon Yu Ming said. Fellow Taoist, although my Bixia sect is not a famous sect, we are still quite famous in the Great Southern Dou region. You have already killed Great Sage Imohua and Qing Ming. If you kill us as well, I'm afraid you will really incur the wrath of everyone, Taoist Jiu Gong said with a slight frown. Bang! Blood rained down as his body exploded. Taoist Jiu Gong died without leaving any bones behind. He was slapped into a pile of mush by Yi Xian. I hate it when people threaten me the most, Yi Xian muttered in disgust. Gasp! Gasps could be heard continuously. Old demon Yu Ming and 9-tailed Fox's eyes were filled with fear. They were already shocked by Yi Xian's cruel methods. At this moment, they didn't even dare to utter a single word. Yi Xian killed someone just because they said something wrong. The two of them had lived for tens of millions of years, but they had never seen such a ruthless person. Yi Xian was ruthless and merciless. He would kill your entire family if you didn't agree with him. This had always been Yi Xian's way of doing things. He also believed in the principle of removing the roots when cutting weeds. Yi Xian was very clear that when he came to the chaotic world, he would never establish any orthodoxy. He would fight alone in the chaotic world, so that there would be no burden. Anyone who offended him, he would kill them. This was the simplest way to deal with them, and it would also intimidate those who wanted to be his enemy. When he was in the 3 realms, he had too many scruples, so he was in danger again and again. This time, Yi Xian learned his lesson and came to the chaotic world alone. Fellow Taoists, do you want to live or die? Yi Xian half-squatted in front of the two with a gentle smile on his face, as if he was talking to a close friend. I want to live, of course I want to live. Old demon Yu Ming smiled flatteringly, but his eyes were filled with fear. He was afraid that Yi Xian would suddenly kill him. Fellow Taoist, you are so powerful. I admire you. The 9 celestial foxes forced a smile. Actually, I am a very reasonable person, and I don't like to kill people. If they didn't threaten me just now, I wouldn't have killed them. Don't you think so? Yi Xian said softly. Of course, they are digging their own graves. Old demon Yu Ming hurriedly added. No matter what you want us to do, we will definitely not refuse. The 9 celestial foxes said humbly. Haha. Yi Xian smiled, and he was very satisfied. He patted the 2 of them on their shoulders and said, as the saying goes, a wise man submits to circumstances. I like smart people, and the 2 of you are undoubtedly very smart. As Yi Xian spoke, he flipped his hand and 2 jade slips appeared. He threw them to the 2 of them and said, Fellow Taoists, please sign the agreement and write that you owe me 100 million spirit stones. Then you may leave. Yi Xian paused for a moment, then smiled and said, Of course, this is the payment for your lives. If you don't want to sign the agreement, it is fine, but... Yi Xian did not continue, but the cruel smile on his face said everything. If the 2 of them did not sign the agreement, then they would both die here. The 9-tailed celestial fox and old demon Yu Ming's expressions changed, but they did not hesitate. They quickly signed the agreement on the jade slips, and then respectfully handed the jade slips to Yi Xian. Well done. Yi Xian took the jade slips and nodded with appreciation. The Chaos Spirit Stone was a product of the chaotic world, and it was essential for cultivators. This kind of spirit stone could improve one's cultivation very quickly, and the spiritual power contained in the Chaos Spirit Stone was extremely pure. Yi Xian naturally would not let it go. Of course, at this moment, their Qingquan bags were taken away by Yi Xian, and they could not have any spirit stones on them. However, the 2 of them were from the orthodoxy, and Yi Xian asked them to sign the agreement. Naturally, he would go to their orthodoxy to ask for it. In fact, the so-called agreement was dispensable to Yi Xian. He just needed an excuse. Otherwise, if he went to their orthodoxy to ask for the spirit stones, it would be unreasonable. At this moment, Lin Miaofa and Lin Miaofa looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. The 2 of them did not expect Yi Xian's cultivation to be so terrifying that he could kill 2 great sages and make the 9-tailed celestial fox and old demon Yu Ming bow down to him. Young friend's cultivation. Suddenly, an ancient voice came from the heavens and earth. The clouds for hundreds of millions of miles rumbled and shook. A boundlessly imposing figure was walking over from the distant horizon. In just a breath's time, he abruptly appeared in the Southern Dipper Party. Rumble! The clouds rolled, and the holy light was piercingly cold. The chaotic streamer circled around the person, and the world seemed to be frozen. The dazzling light was extremely bright. Holy King Huntian? Old demon Yu Ming's face changed slightly when he saw the person. He did not expect Holy King Huntian to appear here. Greetings, Holy King Huntian. The 9-tailed celestial fox raised her eyebrows and hurriedly bowed to the person. Greetings, Holy King Huntian. Lin Miaofa and Lin Miaofa's faces turned pale. They hurriedly knelt down and did not dare to raise their heads. Holy King Huntian, the deputy temple master of the All Spirits Temple in the Great Southern Dipper region, was a truly amazing person. It took him only 50 million years to step into the Holy King realm. He was definitely an overlord in the Great Southern Dipper region. Greetings, Holy King Huntian. Hundreds of little saints were originally watching from afar. When they saw Holy King Huntian arrive, they hurriedly rushed over and knelt on the ground to worship him. Rise all of you. Holy King Huntian had a handsome face and looked like a weak scholar. There was no aura around him, and he was looking at Yi Xian with a smile. Thank you, Holy King. The cheers were like a tsunami as they kowtowed and thanked him. Only then did the crowd stand up uneasily. From this, one could see how terrifying Holy King Huntian's power was. A holy king. In the entire Great Southern Dipper region, a holy king was the supreme existence. Every orthodoxy must have a holy king to truly stand firm in the Great Southern Dipper region. However, holy kings rarely appeared in the world. To a large extent, they were cultivating in seclusion to prepare to step into the creation realm. No one expected Holy King Huntian to appear here. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.